Imagine spending 1,000 years in the underworld without actually being dead. Here, King Yama calls him brother, and the Soul Reapers call him boss. Even the Guardians of the Gate compete to be his steeds, all because he worked tirelessly cleaning the underworld every day. But today, he is finally quitting. He had finally finished his work across the entire realm. If he successfully reincarnates now, he will possess 10,000 years of cultivation more than anyone else. And so, he finds King Yama to resign. The king looks at the Book of Life and Death, then turns his gaze toward the young man, Li Heng. Yama tells him that since he has served the underworld for a millennium, he has accumulated 1,000 years of merit. For this reincarnation, he will be born into a prestigious family of immortal cultivators. The king notes that as long as he practices diligently, he is destined for greatness in the future. Li Heng thanks him with a respectful bow, though deep down, he is absolutely delighted by the news. Soon, led by the ox-headed and horse-faced guardians, he arrives at the Bridge of Helplessness. Granny Ming greets him, saying she heard he was coming. She mentions she added some special ingredients just for him, brewing the tea for an extra 3 hours. She tells him to drink the soup and be on his way, handing him a bowl of yellow medicinal broth. He thinks to himself that Granny Ming is truly something else, brewing him soup and even adding extra ingredients. She clearly wants to make sure he forgets them all. He takes the soup, looking at his 3 old friends with a touch of reluctance. He tells his companion, Wu Wei, that after this farewell, he is heading toward a much wider world. After saying his goodbyes, he holds his nose and gulps it down in a few large swallows. Suddenly, his eyes turn vacant. He looks as if he has lost his very soul. But of course, this is all an act. He had previously obtained a treasure at the bridge. It was the water of everlasting emotion. With this in his system, the memory-erasing soup of Granny Ming has no effect whatsoever. This means he can enter the cycle of reincarnation while keeping every single memory of his past life. As a tunnel of 7-colored light appears in the Great Hall, he transforms into a streak of radiance and vanishes into the path of rebirth. Meanwhile, in the longevity realm, inside a quiet pavilion of the Li family, the ancestor of longevity slowly strokes his goatee. The old man explains that he was observing the celestial patterns late into the night and performed a calculation. He reveals that the ancestral emperor is about to be reborn, causing Li Hongtian's eyes to widen as he trembles with excitement. We learn of an ancient legend within the Li family, suggesting that nearly 100,000 years ago, there was a peerless genius in their lineage who possessed a talent that defied the very heavens. She reached the pinnacle of the great earth realm, but then, for reasons unknown to history, this empress chose to enter the cycle of reincarnation, destined to return after 100 lifetimes. The legend says she would be reborn into the Li family, and the old man suspects the time is now. He believes the ancestral emperor is the very child in Hongtian's wife's womb, leaving Hongtian completely speechless. His eyes nearly pop out of his head at the thought of the ancestral emperor being reborn as his own child. He is desperate to rush back to his wife's side, and the ancestor decides to accompany him. The old man remarks that it is finally time for his weary old bones to get some much-needed exercise. As the ancestor of longevity stands, his aura shifts instantly, radiating a power that belies his age. Meanwhile, inside the womb, Li Heng is marveling at how good it feels to be alive again. With 1,000 years of accumulated merit, he wonders how strong he will become, until he notices a female infant nearby. She is currently fast asleep with her eyes closed. It seems he is going to have a younger sister. Thinking she will be a fine playmate, he begins to merge with the eternal god-demon physique while she sleeps. After some time, the female infant opens her eyes, sensing that her 100 lifetimes of waiting are finally over. She is certain that now, absolutely no one can stop her from becoming the eternal great emperor. To be the eternal great emperor is to be the strongest among all sovereigns, a true peak of power. She is ready to become the ruler of the 3 realms, the culmination of 100,000 years of preparation. Everything has been a mere stepping stone for her to become the eternal great emperor, a goal she is now certain to achieve. As she looks to her side, Li Chenxi notices something unexpected. There is a male infant lying right there next to her. She hadn't anticipated having a younger brother in this life, and just like that, half a month passes by in the blink of an eye. Inside the wing of the house, nearly a dozen midwives are busily at work until, finally, one of them calls out with the news. She offers her congratulations to the clan leader, announcing the birth of a beautiful baby girl. Outside, the waiting men breathe a collective sigh of relief, though only Hongtian and the ancestor know the truth about this child. To everyone else, this is just an ordinary birth, but that illusion is shattered the very next moment. A thunderous roar echoes through the clear sky as golden clouds suddenly gather, stretching for thousands of miles above them. A massive rift, thousands of feet long, tears open in the heavens, and a mysterious purple mist begins to spill out. The members of the Li family feel an overwhelming pressure descending upon them, leaving the weaker ones struggling just to breathe. Suddenly, the female infant actually flies out through the roof, hovering in midair to absorb that celestial purple energy. We can see her life force growing stronger as the mist merges with her, reaching a level that is frankly terrifying. In fact, her innate vitality already surpasses that of many seasoned cultivators who have trained for years. It is hard to imagine the sheer talent required for such a feat, but just as she finishes absorbing the last of the mist, the sound of another baby crying drifts out from the room, and the midwife shouts out to the courtyard once more. She congratulates the clan leader again, for he has been blessed with a second child, a son. Li Hongtian beams with a joy that, surprisingly, exceeds even his excitement for the ancestral emperor's rebirth. While the empress is a legend he must respect, this little boy is the one who will truly carry on his own personal legacy. He vows to raise this son into a powerhouse of heaven and earth, regardless of his talent. But as he is thinking this, the sky erupts with a second explosion of sound, even louder than the first, causing the very world to tremble in awe. Many of the clan members are so overwhelmed by the sheer force of that sound that they collapse onto the ground in terror. We see a massive rift, stretching over 30,000 miles, tear across the sky as giants 10,000 feet tall emerge from the void. There are ethereal, immortal venerables and demonic gods wreathed in dark energy, filling the entire firmament with their presence. By a quick count, there are over 10,000 of them, a dense and terrifying gathering of the most powerful beings imaginable. The horrific pressure causes heaven and earth to tremble, even affecting the hidden experts of the longevity realm who have cultivated for millennia. As these immortals and demons appear, even those masters feel a sense of suffocation while the longevity ancestor gazes toward the sky. His deep pupils tremble at the sight, for it is unheard of for immortals and demons to descend upon the world together. He wonders if a great war is about to break out, as everyone knows these two factions are naturally sworn enemies. Their simultaneous appearance usually signals a catastrophe, or perhaps, as the ancestor looks toward the bedroom, something even more significant. He fears the Empress's talent is so heaven-defying that even the heavens cannot tolerate it, though he cannot truly fathom their purpose. Connecting it to her recent birth, it seems the only explanation. Her potential is so great that the three realms are in an uproar. It looks as though they have come to suppress her, but just as he is thinking this, another sharp crack echoes from the room. The blue roof tiles shatter completely as the baby boy, Nan'in, flies out and begins to hover in midair. Nan'in looks up at the phantoms of the immortals and demons and offers a small smile, a moment that seems to freeze time itself. Suddenly, the thousands of immortals and demons bow their heads and kneel before Nan'in in a display of magnificent, breathtaking scale. Everyone within 30,000 miles witnesses this incredible scene, and the members of the Li family are left utterly speechless by what they see. They struggle to understand why these legendary figures would kneel to Nan'in, especially since these are genuine, celestial manifestations. It seems Nan'in's talent is so terrifying that it forces the heavens themselves to submit, a concept they can hardly wrap their minds around. What kind of talent could possibly command such a tribute at the moment of birth? These 10,000 figures may be phantoms, but their auras are undeniably divine. Yet here they are, casting aside their pride to kneel before little Nan'in. This alone is enough to prove that Nan'in possesses an extraordinary origin and talent, leaving even the longevity ancestor, who has lived for 8,000 years, completely stunned as a thunderous realization echoes through his mind. From this perspective, he is far more powerful than the baby girl born just moments ago. To be honest, it isn't even a close comparison. The ancestor had thought the girl's birth was enough to shock the three realms, but after Nan'in appeared, he realized what true, heart-stopping all looks like. Thousands of immortals and demons kneeling is something most people wouldn't even dare to imagine. Li Hongtian is now in a state of extreme excitement, laughing as he celebrates having a son with the potential to conquer the earth. And how could he not be shaken? One of his children brought forth the primordial chi, while the other forced 10,000 gods to their knees. Their talents are simply heaven-defying. He asks the ancestor if there's been a mistake, wondering if Nan'in is actually the ancestor's reincarnation. Given that Nan'in's talent is so much stronger, it would certainly be a much more convincing explanation for everyone involved. The longevity ancestor pauses for a moment before responding that there is no mistake. The baby girl is definitely the reincarnated ancestor. There is no confusion regarding gender, as the ancestral records state clearly that the ancestor was a woman who became empress 10,000 years ago. She was the famous Empress Qinzi, a name that many of the older generation can still remember with great reverence. Furthermore, in the square in front of the ancestral hall, there stands a magnificent statue dedicated to her memory. It depicts the Empress Qinzi exactly as she was, so a mistake is impossible. Li Hongtian's mouth twitches at the news. He feels as though his brain simply cannot process this information anymore, which, naturally, is quite understandable. The ancestor prepared for 10,000 years, yet she cannot even compare to the newborn Nan'in. He wonders if she would die of anger if she knew. Meanwhile, through the massive hole in the bedroom roof, the scene outside is perfectly visible. Li Qinzi lies in her swaddling clothes, staring up at the thousands of immortals and demons. Her eyes nearly pop out of her head in disbelief. She wonders if this is the eternal immortal demon physique she once studied. During her 10,000 years of research into ancient ruins, she learned of 36,000 types of cultivation bodies, and this one ranks first. This is the eternal immortal demon physique, a divine body that allows one to reach the absolute peak of power, whether following the path of immortals or demons. It is a talent that defies the ages. Li Qinxi realizes her brother possesses this legendary physique, and she can't help but offer a bitter, inward smile. She never imagined that after 10,000 years of careful preparation, she would lose, and lose the very moment she was born. It was a total defeat in terms of natural constitution, but she tells herself that his future achievements will never surpass her own. After all, Li Qinxi spent 10,000 years preparing for this life. The primordial earth fetus and supreme bone were merely the beginning. She has countless hidden treasures and opportunities waiting for her, but her most precious asset is 10,000 years of cultivation experience. That is something a newborn, no matter how gifted, simply cannot match. Thinking of this, Li Qinxi begins to feel much better about herself. Meanwhile, we see Nan Yin sign in at the nursery, obtaining a bottle of Xianling liquid. Finding himself alone in the room, he takes his chance. He holds the jade bottle and gulps the liquid down greedily. Before long, the entire bottle of Xianling liquid has been swallowed into his belly. After absorbing the essence, Nan Yin is quite satisfied. This new body is proving to be far more powerful than he initially imagined. Seeing a few drops left in the bottle, he looks at his sister nearby and playfully dabs a bit of the liquid onto her lips with his finger. Outside, the white-browed ancestor notes that the ancestor specifically chose the day of 9 suns for this reincarnation. Naturally, the goal was to secure a massive opportunity during the blessing ceremony, and they must now help the ancestor complete that process. He then produces a stone 3 feet square. Lu Minglan feels the surge of spiritual energy and is visibly shaken by its presence. She can hardly believe such a massive piece of Yang Branch spiritual jade fetus exists, a jade known for its incredibly gentle spiritual properties. If an infant wears it, their constitution is subtly transformed, turning an ordinary mortal body into that of a peerless genius. From within his swaddling clothes, Nan Yin is also stunned to see such a large piece of spiritual jade. To be honest, it is a rare sight indeed. He assumes he is about to enjoy a great fortune, but a moment later, he sees his younger sister being placed right in the center of the jade. He wonders why she gets to absorb it first when his talent is clearly stronger. He even jokingly questions if his father thinks he isn't his own son. After setting down the jade, the patriarch and ancestor depart, leaving Lu Minglan alone to care for the 2 children as Nan Yin drifts off to sleep. As Lu Minglan lies down to rest on the bed, we hear her breathing grow steady and deep. Sensing she is asleep, Nan Yin opens his eyes. His gaze glows with excitement as he looks toward the spiritual jade fetus, remembering the immortal fetus jade he obtained from the underworld. That treasure is worth 100 times more than this jade, but its medicinal properties are far too aggressive for a newborn to handle safely. He decides to absorb some of the spiritual jade first to strengthen his body, telling himself he is simply borrowing his sister's resources for now. He reaches out a chubby little hand and, with a surprising amount of effort, gives the edge of the spiritual jade fetus a firm tug. A small piece immediately breaks off, and he pops it into his mouth, swallowing it whole. As it hits his stomach, the transformation begins. The jade turns into a surge of soul-stirring energy that spreads through his limbs, energy hundreds of times more potent than the Xianling liquid. A moment later, a brilliant light shines from within him, forming the silhouette of a human figure with a golden glow on the left side. The right side of the silhouette is pitch black, representing the dual nature of the immortal demon physique, half divine, half demonic. This outline is currently just a faint projection. Once it solidifies into a complete figure, his divine physique will have reached the initial stage. Finding the jade quite delicious, he decides to have another piece. Once again, his tiny hand exerts pressure on the corner of the stone. Another small fragment is snapped off. Right above him, Li Qinxi remains lying in the perfect position to absorb the jade's essence. She recognizes this as the very jade she collected ages ago. Since planning her 100-life reincarnation, she had been hoarding such treasures. She had sent them down to the lower realm and left ancestral instructions for her descendants to guard them until her eventual return. She has waited 10,000 years for this specific moment. In just 20 days, the day of 9 suns will finally arrive. She must push her primordial earth fetus to the minor completion stage to receive the heavenly blessing that only occurs once every 10 millennia. If she succeeds, she can manifest a heavenly sun candle within her body, which, with proper cultivation, could become a peerless flame. She has waited 13,000 years for this opportunity, and yet, she suddenly notices something very wrong with her surroundings. She realizes that this little fellow actually has the nerve to steal her spiritual jade. She watches as Nan Yin's hand reaches out again. To her horror, he breaks off another piece and stuffs it into his mouth. Looking down, she sees a hole the size of a fist in her precious jade. It is clear that a significant portion of the spiritual jade has been devoured, a sight that nearly drives our empress to the brink of fury. She is outraged that he would dare consume her treasure. After all, even in the desolate ancient realm, finding such a large piece is no easy feat. Her original plan was to use this jade to reach the minor completion stage of her primordial earth fetus within 20 days. By absorbing it slowly, she could have reached the grand completion stage, but now, those plans are crumbling before her eyes. Every bit the boy absorbs is a bit she loses. To her, this is nothing short of daylight robbery, and as an empress, she refuses to just watch. She decides to take action, reaching out her tiny hand to give Nan Yin's shoulder a firm, indignant shove. The push isn't particularly strong, but it's enough to tip the boy over, startling him awake. He blinks, wondering what on earth just happened. He tells himself his little sister is simply being playful, forgetting for a moment that even a divine infant's body is still in a state of development. Li Chenxi glares at him with a look that clearly says, "Listen, kid, this jade is mine, and you aren't taking another bite." To assert her dominance, she reaches out her own small hand to the edge of the spiritual jade fetus to claim her share. She breaks off a piece the size of a peanut and pops it into her mouth. Seeing this, Nanin finds himself quite amused by her cleverness. Since she wants to follow his lead and eat the jade, he decides to make a game of it, a race to see who can eat the most. And so, a silent eating competition begins between the two infants, each taking turns devouring the precious stone with great delight. A little later, Lu Minglan wakes from her nap and stretches, only to nearly jump out of her skin when she sees what the children are doing. They are actually eating the spiritual jade. While its energy is gentle, consuming it directly like this is usually considered a recipe for disaster. In any normal situation, such raw energy would cause one's meridians to rupture, or worse, lead to a rather messy internal explosion. Yet, as she watches them, she realizes they aren't just fine. Their tiny bodies are actually growing stronger with every bite. It seems their constitutions are far beyond anything she could have imagined, and she realizes she has once again underestimated her own children. Accepting the absurdity of the situation, she decides to help, breaking off small, peanut-sized pieces of the jade for them herself. She places the fragments beside Nan Yin, who simply grins at her. It's a strange family dinner, to be sure, but a productive one. It seems the old saying is true. There is nothing better than a mother's love, especially since his cheapskate father is so clearly biased toward his sister. Li Chenxi is nearly fuming. This is her spiritual jade fetus, yet her mother isn't protecting her interests and is even secretly feeding the boy. She is convinced the two of them are in cahoots, though, of course, these indignant thoughts remain locked inside her mind where no one can see them. As a newborn, she can only watch helplessly as her precious treasure is snatched away, bit by this annoying little brother. 2 days pass in the blink of an eye, and the once perfectly square block of spiritual jade now looks as though a giant chunk has been bitten out of it. Nan Yin has managed to devour more than half of it himself, leaving the smaller portion for Li Chenxi, while Lu Minglan remains in the room. Deep down, her heart leans toward the boy, so she doesn't interfere. In her eyes, it doesn't matter which child eats the jade. As long as it makes their bodies stronger and they remain safe, she sees it as a blessing, even if they finish the entire thing. Suddenly, we see Nan Yin float into the center of the room, his tiny body radiating two distinct colors, a brilliant gold on the left, and a deep black on the right. What were once mere faint outlines have now solidified into the distinct silhouette of a human figure. Lu Minglan stares at him, a sudden sense of overwhelming pressure washing over her that makes it difficult for her to even draw breath. She realizes his divine body has reached the minor completion stage. She can hardly believe he achieved such a feat in so little time. To be honest, it was largely thanks to the spiritual jade. Without it, Nan Yin would never have reached this level of power so quickly. Li Chenxi senses the aura of the divine body and looks up at the boy, nearly losing her mind with rage at the sight of his progress. She is ready to fight him for stealing so much of her jade. After all, this was her primary resource for reaching the grand completion of her own earth fetus. Now that he has eaten so much, what remains likely won't be enough for her, and the sheer frustration of it all sends the blood rushing to her head. The former empress is so overwhelmed with fury that she actually faints, a development that Nan Yin notices immediately with some confusion. He wonders why his little sister has suddenly passed out, assuming that perhaps his powerful display of strength simply gave her a bit of a fright. He tells himself it's natural for a newborn who understands nothing to be startled, and as his body settles back onto the bed, he looks at the jade. The spiritual jade, which started as a massive, sturdy block, now looks like a piece of cheese that has been nibbled on by a very hungry mouse. He notes that while Li Chenxi ate her share, the massive gap in the center was his doing, as his divine body is clearly much stronger than his sister's. Because his absorption speed is so much faster, he rolls over to the edge of the bed and reaches out to break off another large piece of the spiritual jade. Previously, while his sister was consuming pieces the size of a peanut, he was already swallowing chunks as large as an ostrich egg. That was already 5 times her size, but the piece he just broke off is even larger. Now that his body has reached minor completion, everything has changed. His internal physical qualities have strengthened 100-fold, meaning his absorption speed will skyrocket, and taking in this much at once is no longer a problem. He breaks the large chunk of spiritual jade into several smaller pieces and swallows them all, finishing one after another in quick succession. After that, he breaks off another egg-sized piece and gulps it down, continuing this cycle of eating and absorbing without a single moment of rest. He even remembers to break off a small bit for his sister, telling her not to be polite and that he'll help her eat while she's unconscious. He tells himself he's being quite generous as he continues this routine from day to night and back to dawn, feeding both himself and his sister. It's all very productive, really. As the morning sun begins to peek through the window, a stray beam of light falls directly onto the baby girl's face. Lichensi uses her tiny hand to block the sunlight and slowly opens her eyes, only to realize with confusion that she is lying on a soft bed. She wonders why she isn't lying on top of the spiritual jade anymore, and as her vision clears, she tries to make sense of her surroundings. The first thing she sees is the side of the baby boy, who appears to be stuffing something into his mouth with great enthusiasm. As her focus sharpens, she realizes with horror that he is holding a massive chunk of her precious spiritual jade in his tiny hands. She looks toward the spot where the jade block used to be, wondering if someone moved it or if it has simply vanished into thin air. She searches the room with her eyes but finds no trace of the jade, until a new movement from the boy catches her attention once again. We see the boy crawl toward the edge of the bed and lean over, reaching his hand down into the space below as if searching for something. When his hand reappears, his previously empty palm is now holding another substantial fragment of the spiritual jade fetus. This particular piece is nearly the size of a steamed bun, yet he stuffs it into his mouth and swallows it in just a few bites. Lichensi is utterly speechless. It took him 2 full days to absorb a piece that size before, and now he's finishing it in a single gulp. He had just devoured 2 days' worth of her resources, the very essence she had painstakingly gathered to nurture her primordial earth fetus. Who could have guessed this boy would benefit so much? She hurriedly crawls to the edge of the bed and pokes her head over to look down. And what she sees leaves her utterly stunned. The spiritual jade fetus, which was originally 3 feet square, has been mostly devoured, leaving only a small fragment barely half a foot long. The rest had been eaten by that boy. Her precious jade was gone. The former empress feels a surge of fury so intense it rushes straight to her head. Having only been awake for a moment, she faints once again. Li Chen looks at his sister with some surprise, wondering why she fell back asleep so quickly. He decides her constitution is simply too weak and resolves to help her recover, reaching into his spatial realm to pull out a jade bottle. Inside is a mortal fetus jade dew, a celestial essence born of heaven and earth that possesses an incredibly powerful nourishing effect on infants. Its effects are far more potent than the spiritual jade, making it unsuitable as an initial liquid for a fetus's developing body. He opens the bottle and dips his finger inside, placing a few drops of the liquid into his sister's mouth. To be honest, he's being quite helpful. This jade dew is priceless, easily worth more than the spiritual jade she lost. As she swallows the essence, Li Chenxi begins to smile in her sleep, as if lost in a beautiful dream. Li Chun then swallows the rest of the dew himself. Lying on the soft bed, he begins to absorb the violent energy within his body, a task made much easier by the foundation the jade provided. Absorbing the immortal dew is a smooth process, and after a long while, his tiny body begins to emit brilliant, dazzling rays of light. A terrifying aura shoots straight into the highest heavens, where a colossal giant god, 10,000 feet tall, begins to manifest. With its head touching the sky and feet planted in the abyss, it stands like a pillar connecting heaven and earth, shimmering in 2 distinct colors. The left side is a radiant gold, overflowing with ethereal immortal chi, while the right side is a deep, abyssal black. It looks like a monstrous demonic energy rising from an endless void. The figure of this giant god is so massive that for 10,000 miles, everyone can see this incredible sight. Countless commoners fall to their knees, bowing and praying toward the celestial giant. Even seasoned cultivators are paralyzed with fear upon sensing the giant's aura, which now echoes through the vastness of the 100,000 mountains. We find ourselves at the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets, where the Elder of Heavenly Secrets sits atop a high tower, gazing toward the giant god. He notes that the Li family has 2 heavenly stars rising, destined to turn the world upside down. Beside the old man stands a young girl. "Master, did you say the Li family has heavenly stars?" And 2 of them. Upon hearing this, the girl's eyes widen in disbelief. Her eyes are filled with shock. The appearance of a heavenly star signifies the birth of someone with great destiny, and now there are 2. This suggests the Li family's fortune is truly about to defy the heavens. The elder nods slightly as the 2 stars echo one another. It seems the momentum of the Li family's rise will be unstoppable. Meanwhile, in a forbidden attic of the Ji clan, an old man awakens. He slowly opens his eyes. If outsiders discovered that this Ji clan ancestor was still alive, they would surely be speechless with shock. Sensing the aura of the giant god, the old man's pupils suddenly contract. Could this be the legendary eternal immortal demon body? He wonders why such a thing would appear in the longevity realm, having only read about this divine physique in an ancient book. The text only offered a few words of description, focusing on its most distinct feature, the coexistence of both immortal and demonic energy. Without that detail, he likely wouldn't have recognized it. He wonders if this 10,000-foot avatar means the physique has already reached completion. The thought of a perfected immortal demon body makes the old man gasp. "Where's the clan head?" he calls out. His light command echoes from the forbidden grounds, and soon after, a burly middle-aged man appears within the attic. Yahello kneels and bows 3 times, greeting the ancestor Tianya. The old man immediately asks if he knows the origin of the giant avatar. Ancestor Tianya has been in seclusion for years, only emerging today because the aura of the giant god was simply too terrifying to ignore. Yahello lowers his head and responds that, if his guess is correct, this divine manifestation originates from the Li family. The ancestor is surprised that such a powerhouse has risen in the mere century he was away, and he looks out the window at the sky. A hint of wariness flickers in his eyes. If the physique is truly complete, he fears that no one will be able to stop them. Hearing the words, physique completion, Yahello snaps his head up, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. "What? You say it is finished?" Though he saw the avatar, he didn't understand its true nature. Ancestor Tianya, though reluctant to admit it, confirms that it is indeed true. But he cannot change the facts, and the expression on Yahello's face is quite a sight, as if he's witnessed something utterly impossible. He recalls that 2 children were born to the Li family recently, and at the boy's arrival, 10,000 ancient demons knelt in worship. In just 15 days, the infant's divine body has already reached completion. Such talent is terrifying, as divine bodies are the world's strongest constitutions. Every divine body possesses horrifying cultivation potential, and they generally exist in 2 stages, minor completion and great completion. With each level gained, one's talent increases by dozens or even hundreds of times, and for some truly terrifying physiques, the jump is even greater. Reaching great completion can boost power by thousands or even 10,000 times. The eternal immortal demon body was already frightening enough on its own. Now that it has reached the stage of great completion, the sheer scale of its power is almost impossible to imagine. It truly defies logic. 15 days, Ancestor Tianya's face is a mask of shock, and his body trembles as he speaks. He had assumed this was the work of a veteran. He imagined the master of this demon body was someone who had cultivated for decades or centuries. He never dreamed it could be a newborn. Yahello looks at the ancestor and asks if they should find an opportunity to eliminate the boy, making a sharp, cutting gesture with his hand. The Ji and Li clans are both ancient families, and naturally, there has always been a fair amount of friction between them over the years. They only maintain a polite facade. Now that the Li family has produced a child with such heaven-defying talent, he fears for the Ji clan's future. Absolutely not. Ancestor Tianya waves his hand dismissively, his voice heavy with caution. To be honest, he knows better than to gamble here. He explains that for a child to achieve the eternal immortal demon body so quickly, he must be protected by an immense amount of destiny. The Ji clan should seek his friendship rather than his enmity. Yahello is stunned. He never expected the ancestor to think so highly of a baby. Since the ancestor has decided on peace, they will work to close the gap between the families and eventually become formal allies. We return to the entrance of the Li estate, where Li Hongtian has finally returned after several days away. He was in a perfectly good mood. But the moment he sees the massive divine avatar in the sky, his expression shifts to pure shock. He transforms into a streak of light. He flies toward his own courtyard, where we see Ancestor Changxing standing with his head tilted back, gazing up at the giant god. "Ancestor, what is happening here?" Li Hongtian asks. Ancestor Changxing turns his head stiffly and remarks that if his guess is correct, things are about to change. He explains that the eternal immortal demon body has likely reached great completion. Li Hongtian swallows hard, barely able to believe his son has achieved this already. It has only been a few days, after all. He never imagined that in the 5 days he spent at the Forbidden Grounds, such a transformation would occur. Returning to find a completed divine body is a bit much to process. Ancestor Changxing looks toward the bedroom and suggests they go to his wife's room. Perhaps there, we will find our answers. Li Hongtian steps forward and pushes the door open, immediately spotting the boy sitting on the bed. His gaze shifts to Li Qinxi lying nearby, but then he notices something truly shocking: the state of the spirit jade fetus. The massive, square block of yang spirit jade has been reduced to a tiny fragment, barely half a foot long. It is barely a tenth of its original size. Seeing this, Li Hongtian finally realizes what happened, and he feels as though his head might explode. On one hand, he is ecstatic that his son's divine body is complete. To be honest, he wouldn't mind if the boy ate the whole thing. But that spirit jade belonged to the ancestress. Having consumed so much of it, he feels a wave of panic, fearing she might seek retribution. He worries he won't be able to handle the consequences. After all, the ancestress has spent 100 lifetimes and 100,000 years cultivating. How could a newborn baby possibly compete with her power? Even if the boy has achieved a completed divine body, the gap is immense. While he might grow faster in the future, he is currently no match for her. Ancestor Changxing is also starting to panic now. He slaps his forehead, realizing why he had been feeling so uneasy lately while Li Hongtian was away from the estate. Lu Minglan was alone with 2 children, busy with nursing and care, so he hadn't felt it was appropriate to enter the private wing to check on them. No one could have predicted that such a massive event would unfold in just a few days. Yes, the completion of the divine body is a miracle. As an ancestor, he is naturally happy, but he has no idea how to explain this to the ancestress. Li Hongtian rushes to the bedside. He grabs Lu Minglan's shoulders, asking why she didn't stop their son, Li Hong, from eating the Yang spirit jade. Eating it like that is incredibly dangerous. He could have easily exploded from the sheer energy. She simply replies that since he seemed fine, she let him continue. Now, Lu Minglan breaks into a cold sweat, her robes dampening as she realizes the terrifying risk she took, which, in hindsight, was quite a gamble. Her heart races with the realization of what could have happened. Li Hongtian sighs deeply, telling her she was far too careless. He reminds her that the spirit jade was meant for both children, asking what Chinzi will absorb if Hung eats it all, but she reveals Chinzi ate some too. It was simply that her speed was far slower than Hang's, which is why he ended up consuming the vast majority of the spirit jade. To Lu Minglan, this wasn't a problem at all. They are both her children, and she loves them equally regardless of who ate more. She points out that about 10% of the jade remains, and since Hung no longer needs it, Chinzi can have the rest. As a mother, she is clearly trying to be fair. Li Hongtian sighs, and we see him follow the ancestor out of the room and into the courtyard. He asks the ancestor what they should do now, noting that while their son's progress is good, so little of the spirit jade remains. He wonders how they will explain this to the ancestress. Ancestor Changxing sighs, his white eyebrows knitting together in deep concern. He mentions there are other treasures in the vault for nurturing infants, though none as effective as the spirit jade. They will have to make do. He can only hope the ancestress won't be too angry. It is a helpless situation, really, a powerhouse of 100 lifetimes. Unable to compete with a baby boy for resources, if word of this ever got out to the world. Those who knew the ancestress in her past lives would likely laugh themselves silly. Li Hongtian looks back through the open door. He gazes at the small fragment of spirit jade, hoping the remaining 10% is enough for the ancestress to reach minor completion. There are still 15 days until the full moon blessing. The 9 heaven sun blessing was her choice. After all, they cannot afford to miss it. They believe that for the sake of that blessing, the ancestress surely has other preparations in place. This time, they are certain she will obtain the sun blessing and secure the sunfire seed. Li Hongtian picks up the baby girl and places her on the bed closest to the wall, carefully tucking her in. He picks up the remaining spirit jade and places it in the corner, deciding the 2 children must sleep separately from now on. This last piece belongs entirely to Chinzi. He won't let Hung snatch it away, especially since Heng's divine body is already complete. Hung has no use for it now. On the surface, they must still show favor to the ancestress. The infants have only just been born, and for now, they can only crawl, not walk. Despite their powerful divine bodies, they must still grow like normal children. They must develop slowly, taking things one step at a time, despite the divine bodies they possess. Even with such power, they are still our children, and Chinzi needs the spirit jade to grow. Minglan nods, telling him not to worry. She promises to look after both of them. Hongtian kneels by the bed, watching his smiling son and whispering softly to him. He tells Hung not to steal from his sister anymore and to be good. To his shock, the infant instinctively replies with a clear okay. The hair on Hongtian's neck stands on end. He rubs his ears, wondering if he's hearing things as a normal infant. Usually takes a year to speak, and even then, only simple words like mama or papa. But this child is only 10 days old. He turns his stiff neck toward the equally stunned Minglan, asking if he really just heard Hung say okay. Minglan confirms she heard it too, her heart racing with shock at the sound of her son's voice so soon. Usually, infants must gradually interact with the world to understand right from wrong and learn how to respond to others. To understand and reply so early is the mark of a true genius. Deep down, Heng feels a sudden jolt of panic. Cold sweat breaks out on his back. He realized he nearly exposed himself. His past life and memories are secrets he must keep. These truths must never be known by outsiders to avoid unnecessary trouble. He is still small, after all, with no way to protect himself. Caution is his only shield. He tells himself he shouldn't be speaking yet, but the completion of his eternal divine body has accelerated his physical development, making speech possible. Hongtian stares wide-eyed and tries asking a few more questions. He asks Heng if he understands, promising him some beast milk if he can just say daddy. He waits expectantly. The baby boy gives no further response, simply smiling foolishly. Seeing this, the 2 parents finally breathe a sigh of relief. They decide it must have been an accident, a random sound rather than actual speech. There was no need to worry, it seems. As night falls and a full moon rises, a fist-sized night pearl glows brightly inside the fragrant chamber. The room is bathed in soft light. Minglan listens to the night breeze, her steady breathing showing she has finally fallen asleep. Meanwhile, Chinzi wakes up from a beautiful dream of drinking celestial dew, only to open her eyes and find reality much different. She notices her body has become significantly stronger, even more so than after absorbing the spirit jade. She wonders if that boy gave her something good, but she quickly dismisses the thought as a mere illusion. After waking up, we see her realize she is now sleeping in her own separate bed. That troublesome boy is finally on the other side of the room, and she feels a sense of relief. At last, she thinks, he won't be able to steal her resources. From now on, she can absorb her treasures right here in her own bed. She wonders how he could possibly snatch them from her now. Normally, an infant takes over a year to learn how to walk, as their physical development is far from complete at this stage. To her, the space between these two beds is like a vast canyon, keeping them completely separated. She no longer fears his interference. Chintzy breaks off a small piece of the spirit jade, waving it triumphantly toward the baby boy before popping it into her mouth. She swallows it with great satisfaction, telling herself she will eventually teach this little brat a proper lesson for his earlier behavior. She glances over and sees that Menglan is fast asleep. Meanwhile, Hung begins crawling toward the edge of his bed, looking as if he might fall. Chintzy isn't worried at all. The wooden bed is about 3 feet high. Even if the boy falls, there is no way he could climb back up. Suddenly, a soft thud echoes through the room, and Chintzy is instantly frozen in shock. The boy didn't fall. He sat up and lightly jumped to the floor. He begins walking toward her with a wide smile. To be perfectly honest, she felt it was the most terrifying smile she had ever seen. It seemed almost demonic to her. Her mind begins to reel as she realizes that he is already capable of standing on his own 2 feet. It feels as if 10,000 flies are buzzing in her head. Despite her own supreme constitution and the treasures she has absorbed, she still hasn't mastered the art of walking. And yet, this infant boy is already strolling across the room as if it were nothing. It is a terrifying display of power. She wonders if this is the true nature of the eternal divine body, feeling as though she is already lost. The defeat feels absolute, making her question if her 100 cycles of reincarnation were a mistake. Meanwhile, Hung reaches her bed and starts climbing. He only discovered today that he could already stand and walk. Even a simple jump was now within his physical capabilities. This is the result of his eternal divine body reaching completion, which has accelerated his growth far beyond that of any ordinary infant. He finds it quite amusing that his father thought a separate bed could contain him, as if that would be enough to stop him. Walking to the corner, he breaks off another small piece of the spirit jade and pops it into his mouth, feeling the energy enter his body. It transforms into a vast wave of power spreading through his frame. But wait, something is different now that his divine body has reached completion. He notices a change. Previously, when he absorbed the spirit jade, the spiritual energy would surge into his meridians like a violent tsunami. This time, however, the spiritual essence enters his body with surprising gentleness, behaving in a far more docile manner. His meridians have expanded into something resembling a grand canal, capable of withstanding even the most turbulent flows now that his body has matured. The effects of the spirit jade have become negligible for him. Further absorption yields little result. It seems this treasure is no longer of use to him. Since that is the case, he decides to leave the rest for his sister. He breaks off a large piece and opens his mouth wide, pretending he's about to eat it. He even gives her a playful, smug wink. Watching this, Chintzy feels an overwhelming sense of grievance washing over her. Crystal clear tears quickly well up in her eyes. This spirit jade was something she had gone through immense hardship to find, after all. And now, this brat was going to eat the whole thing. She wonders if her 100 cycles of reincarnation were meant to be this difficult as the tears finally fall. We see a legendary empress, a being who has lived for 100,000 years, actually reduced to tears by a baby's prank. Hung hadn't expected her to be so fragile. Deciding the joke has gone far enough, he breaks the spirit jade into smaller, manageable pieces. He stuffs them into Chintzy's small hands and gives her cheek a gentle squeeze. As soon as she feels the treasure, her crying begins to subside. The boy quickly stopped crying. It seemed he actually felt bad for her, even if he was returning the spirit realm fetus to its rightful place. Seeing that his sister has calmed down, he quietly returns to his own bed. Now, all that remains is to wait for the full moon blessing. Deep down, he is quite eager to see what kind of blessing he will receive. Half a month later, under a sky thick with stars, we find tens of thousands of clansmen gathered in the square of the Lee family's backyard. For them, this is a monumental occasion. It is the day of the full moon blessing, where the godson and goddess will receive their divine gifts together. Coinciding with the rare 9-sun alignment that occurs once in 10,000 years, this promises to be an exceptionally rare ceremony. With some time left before sunrise, the crowd whispers about the 9-sun event, a spectacle one might only witness once in a lifetime. The anticipation in the air is palpable as the crowd wonders whether the godson or the goddess will receive the greater blessing from the 9-sun alignment. Most assume it will be the godson, given his divine body has reached completion, though the goddess is formidable in her own right. Legend says that those who receive the heavenly sun blessing will have a solar seed planted within them, a spark of immense potential. If successful, it grants power at the level of primordial fire, but enduring such a blessing requires a body of incredible strength. We see the clansmen whispering, unsure if the two infants can truly withstand the pressure, despite their powerful physical constitutions. After all, they are only a month old. Enduring the terrifying power of the heavenly sun is a daunting task with a high risk of failure. No one can guarantee their success. As the first light of dawn begins to rise in the east, something truly unexpected happens. At the very edge of the horizon, 9 fiery red orbs appear, looking for all the world as if 9 suns are rising at once. The crimson light quickly stains the horizon, turning half the sky into a sea of burning red. Many common folk watching this spectacle are left speechless, while some farmers, gripped by fear, fall directly to their knees. They bow toward the horizon, crying out that 9 suns have appeared and that a great famine will surely leave them to starve. Ancient rumors often spoke of times when 9 suns scorched the earth, leaving nothing but desolation in their wake. There are also legends saying that whenever these 9 suns appeared together, a deity named Hui shot down 8 of them to restore peace to the world. A comforting thought, perhaps. However, the cultivators and clans of the immortal realm who witnessed this celestial phenomenon do not share the peasants' terror. They know this is merely an extremely rare vision, a spectacle of the heavens rather than a literal apocalypse. What is rising isn't actually 9 suns, but 8 stars that resemble the sun, passing incredibly close to the immortal realm. This wonder occurs only once every 10,000 years. On the Li family square, a sacrificial altar stands 30 meters high. On either side of the altar lies a baby, the godson, and the goddess. On the small platform to the right, Chenxi watches the reflection of the 9 rising suns in her eyes, her tiny hands clenching as the 9-sun power begins to descend. For this incredibly rare blessing to succeed, everything must be perfectly aligned. It requires a specific technique to draw down the sun's power. One part is the shadow, the other the foundation. Without both, the foundation alone is useless. Without the means to summon that solar energy, one would be forced to watch the power slip away, completely helpless to stop it. Chenxi turns her head, glancing at Nanine on her left. She wonders, quite smugly, how he expects to compete with her this time. Nanine's divine body is formidable, certainly, but without a technique to draw the sun, that strength counts for very little. She is convinced that he will only receive the most basic of blessings. With the heavenly sun's power, her own strength will soar, leaving Nanine far behind in the dust. In her mind, the competition is already over. At the edge of the world, 9 suns crest the horizon, casting a scorching, fiery light. The heat is immediate and intense. Even at the break of dawn, the temperature rises so sharply that the crops in the distant fields begin to wither. Their leaves droop as the moisture is sucked away. Suddenly, from the goddess's tiny frame, the dragon shadow, immortal scripture manifests. A fire dragon erupts from her, transforming into a massive beast 100 feet long that streaks toward the horizon with incredible speed. The dragon's aura is terrifying, its pressure weighing down on the very sky. For 1,000 miles, every beast feels the urge to bow in submission. To ensure she claims the solar power, Chenxi specifically mastered this scripture. Now that her primordial earth womb has reached its first stage, she finally has enough internal energy to manifest the technique. Though, to be honest, she is barely holding it together. This is not even a fraction of the technique's true potential, yet the Li family members are left staring with their mouths wide open. They whisper in shock, wondering if the goddess truly possesses the blood of a fire dragon flowing through her tiny veins. They see the dragon racing to seize the sun's power, unaware that Chenxi is consciously wielding a complex immortal technique. After all, she is only a month old. They assume a guardian spirit has appeared to protect her from the overwhelming presence of the 9 suns. They believe the dragon is acting on its own to claim the blessing for her. It's a rare sight, but in this world, not entirely impossible. Nanine watches the fire dragon, his eyes narrowing slightly. He hadn't expected his little sister to have such a powerful guardian helping her. With the dragon already fighting for the solar energy, he realizes he needs to take action as well, and he falls into deep thought. He begins to consider how to shift from a passive role to an active one, drawing upon the powerful techniques he gathered over 1,000 years in the underworld. However, since he is only a month old and hasn't officially started his cultivation, many techniques are currently unusable, leading him to enter his system space. We see a vast world within, where level ground is covered in all sorts of heavenly treasures and miraculous elixirs, and in one particular area, several jade slips float in the air. Some emit a terrifying aura, making it clear that the secrets contained within are anything but ordinary. A black stone billowing with thick smoke catches his attention, a technique he obtained from the 16th level of hell. It is the 10,000 demon heaven-devouring bow, which uses blood as a catalyst to borrow the power of countless demons and swallow the world itself. This set of techniques doesn't require a physical demonic weapon. Instead, it relies on blood, and the stronger the demonic energy in that blood, the more powerful the effect will be. It is, quite honestly, the most suitable technique for him to use right now, so he chooses it. Inside the system space, his phantom image appears as a young man in his early 20s, the very image of his previous life. The phantom grabs the black stone and crushes it, and as the stone shatters, a streak of black light merges into his forehead. New memories flood his mind, containing the intricate details and secrets of the 10,000 demon heaven-devouring bow. One benefit of techniques obtained through the system is that they can be mastered instantly just by crushing the source. This saves him from the tedious process of meditation and comprehension. Now that he has mastered the method, we return to the real world. The fire dragon rushes toward the horizon, roaring at the 9 suns in the sky as terrifying sound waves travel for thousands of miles. The roar intimidates every living creature on the earth, and a powerful suction force begins to release from the dragon's maw. The 9 suns have fully risen now. The central sun is the largest, emitting the most intense and brilliant fiery light. This is known as the heavenly sun, flanked by 4 suns on the left and 4 on the right, each slightly smaller in size and radiance. As the dragon's suction force takes hold, the central heavenly sun responds by releasing an even more dazzling and blinding light. The entire world is dyed a deep, burning red. Between the 4 suns on the left, a pillar of red light suddenly appears. This pillar connects them all together, and these 4 suns begin to release their collective flaming power simultaneously. The light merges into the central heavenly sun, and the 4 suns on the right follow suit, connecting to one another in perfect alignment. They funnel their collective flaming power into that central sun, so that now, the fiery energy of all 9 suns is gathered together. The central heavenly sun erupts with an even more dazzling brilliance, releasing a terrifying heat that feels almost alive. Like a tidal wave, the heat spreads from the horizon toward the inland, turning everything in its path into charred remains. A pillar of light suddenly shoots out from the heavenly sun, surging directly toward the Li family's location with a sharp whistle. We see Li Chenxi fly up from the altar, hovering in midair as the pillar of light strikes her directly. She is instantly submerged in the flames, and the waiting members of the Li family look on with expressions of pure joy at this heavenly sun blessing. The goddess has truly summoned the power of the sun. That fire dragon was so strong it released such a terrifying and sharp force. After receiving this blessing, her future achievements will surely surpass the holy sun, as there are several key factors to increasing one's strength. Natural talent is only one aspect, while true opportunity is what really dictates power. Some people possess extraordinary talent, yet their luck in life is simply abysmal. Others are born with lesser talent, but manage to encounter various unique opportunities later on. Comparing the two, the latter is almost always stronger, and this heavenly sun blessing is undoubtedly a massive boost for the goddess. It can compensate for any disadvantage in her natural talent, allowing her to catch up to the holy sun's pace immediately. Li Hongtian feels the terrifying presence of the fire dragon and finds his body trembling. To be honest, only an immortal could perform such a feat. Their Li family possesses many shadow energy techniques, but compared to this fire dragon, the difference is staggering. The ancestral brother brought experts from desolate Heaven Valley, after all, and any technique they use could easily crush the longevity realm. The longevity ancestor strokes his goatee, his white eyebrows twitching upward. It seems the ancestral brother was well prepared for this blessing. The fire dragon is truly a masterstroke. Any technique the ancestral brother performs casually is already far superior to anything this 8,000-year-old ancestor can do. Li Hongtian then looks toward the silent baby boy. He speaks with a hint of regret, noting that little Hunger is only a month old and couldn't possibly understand shadow energy techniques yet. It is a pity that little Hunger surely won't receive the heavenly sun blessing, especially since he happened to be born during this once-in-a-millennium event. Missing such a chance is truly regrettable, but the family cannot help him. He must rely entirely on himself to find his own path. The longevity ancestor nods, noting that while the boy might miss the blessing, his eternal immortal demon body is already terrifyingly powerful. If they nurture him well, he will surely become the ancestral brother's right-hand man, and the ancestral brother will certainly reward them for it. He knows the ancestral brother has undergone 100 reincarnations just to become the strongest in heaven and earth, but cultivation is a constant struggle. It is never easy, so having a helper by his side is always good. It is truly Hunger's luck to be the ancestral brother's sibling. Li Hongtian remarks with some emotion that after 100,000 years of preparation, the ancestral brother lacks no treasure if Hunger performs well. The ancestral brother won't be stingy. Even the smallest scraps from his table would grant the boy infinite benefits. Meanwhile, on the altar, little Hunger opens his eyes. Blinded by the dazzling light, he uses his tiny hand to shield his eyes, realizing his younger sister has already drawn the heavenly sun's power. He knows he must act quickly. The vision of the 9 suns is fleeting, and if he misses this chance, he may never see it again. A single drop of blood, shimmering with an eerie black light, flows from his fingertip, a drop of essence blood containing overwhelming demonic energy. This is incredibly precious. Unless one's divine body is fully matured, they wouldn't dare consume essence blood this way. He prepares the 10,000 demon sky-swallowing bow. The black bead of blood shoots toward the sky, sizzling as it transforms into a massive cloud of dark mist that rumbles through the air. High above, a crack 10,000 feet long appears in the sky, looking as though some terrifying demon god has literally torn the heavens apart. From the other side of the rift, billowing demonic energy surges forth, revealing row upon row of demon gods standing 1,000 feet tall. The crowd gazes up at these celestial demons and falls into a panic. No one understands what is happening or why these beings have descended. They wonder if the demon gods have come to steal the heavenly sun's power. To be honest, a single sneeze from one could likely kill them all. Many members of the Li family are so terrified they begin to flee, not daring to remain in the presence of such overwhelming darkness. Li Qinxi, still busy absorbing the solar energy, is wrapped in extreme yang fire and remains completely unaffected by the encroaching demonic mist. Just as everyone assumes the demon gods are about to attack the longevity realm, an unexpected scene unfolds before their very eyes. Instead of launching an attack, we see the demon gods simply sit cross-legged, floating calmly high above in the 9 heavens. The sight of 10,000 demon gods in meditation is truly spectacular, forming a dense, sky-covering canopy until a sudden, thunderous boom echoes. One demon god releases a terrifyingly sharp pull, drawing the power of the heavenly sun from the horizon, followed by another deafening blast. Another demon god exerts its force, and then another, until all 10,000 join in, making it feel as though the entire sky is being torn down. The heavens seem on the verge of collapsing as the 9 suns at the horizon finally reach their limit and can no longer resist the pull. The central sun erupts, releasing a pillar of light 1,000 times thicker than before, surging directly toward the Li family estate. The 8 surrounding suns do not merge. Instead, each one releases its own massive beam of light, targeting the same destination. As they descend toward the Li family, each pillar is 100 times larger than what Li Qinxi absorbed. Suddenly, fire leaps into the air. All 9 pillars of light converge on little Hunger, drowning him in a golden glow that carries the ultimate power of solar fire. The intensity instantly scatters the 10,000 demon gods, but it doesn't matter. They have already fulfilled their singular mission. They successfully summoned the heavenly sun's power. Normally, demon gods cannot absorb such energy. Their only role here was to act as a catalyst. Their purpose was to guide the blessing down to Hung. The light from the 9 suns is now so blinding it is almost impossible to behold. Everyone in the Li family shields their eyes. A few who are a bit slow to react try to stare at the convergence point. With just one glance, blood begins to seep from their eyes. Only the truly powerful can use their spiritual energy to protect their vision. Looking toward the sky, Li Hongtian's jaw drops, so low you could practically fit a person in his mouth. He is utterly speechless. Even Wang Xian, usually the picture of a refined and elegant gentleman, finds himself swearing in pure disbelief at the sight. The idea of 10,000 demon gods summoning the heavenly sun for hunger is simply terrifying. It is a scene of absolute shock. With 10,000 avatars, each 1,000 feet tall, performing a technique together to pull the suns closer, the sheer force is overwhelming. The sky nearly collapsed under the strain. If one used this method to draw spiritual energy, they could likely drain the entire longevity realm. It makes one wonder how anyone else is supposed to compete. Hunger is protected by 10,000 demons, though no one knows how they appeared. One can only assume this is the work of the 10,000 demons. It is the only explanation that makes sense for the eternal immortal demon body. Whether one is an immortal or a demon, this is the ultimate divine physique. So having 10,000 demons as guardians is perfectly natural. We see the longevity ancestor's body trembling, his white hair dancing wildly as he realizes this is the 9 monster tattoo, the stuff of legends. The 9 monster heavenly sun tattoos are divided into several grades, and the effects between them are worlds apart. For instance, the mark Li Qinxi received earlier is known as the Heavenly Sun Tattoo, where the central sun acts as the primary source. With the 8 surrounding suns assisting to gather solar fire, this type of tattoo is already incredibly powerful, terrifying, even. It requires not only a powerful shadow, but a robust constitution to merge with the mark. In all of eternity, it is said to be quite rare. The 9 monster Heavenly Sun has appeared fewer than 5 times in history, and that includes Li Qinxi's current attempt. Over millions of years, the phenomenon has occurred 10,000 times, yet only 5 people ever obtained the tattoo. Talk about exclusive. But the true 9 monster tattoo involves all 9 suns releasing their solar fire simultaneously to create the mark together. Its power is 1,000 times stronger than a standard heavenly sun tattoo. Until now, it existed only in myths and legends. No one had ever heard of a person actually obtaining it until this very moment. The ancestor admits he had only read whispers of it and never imagined he would see the 9 monster tattoo in his lifetime. He begins to wonder if the great ancestor was reincarnated into the wrong body. If this baby boy were the ancestor, everything would make sense. If the boy displayed such overwhelming strength, the family would find it easy to accept and believe in his destiny. But the great ancestor is the baby girl, not the boy. Her 100,000 years of preparation seem pale compared to a newborn infant. The gap between them isn't just large, it's astronomical. It's enough to make the great ancestor die of pure frustration, and sure enough, it happens. High above, the baby girl absorbing the solar energy suddenly loses control and begins to plummet from the sky. As she falls, a spray of bright red blood erupts from her mouth. Li Hongtian immediately takes flight to intercept her. He catches the baby girl firmly in his arms, calling out in a panic to see if the great ancestor is all right. In his panic, he even blurted out the words, "Ancestor brother." Fortunately, they were high enough that no other clansman could hear him. Hearing those words, Li Chenxi's small face turned from pale to flushed. To her, being called ancestor brother felt like a direct insult. The more he called her that, the angrier she became. After preparing for 100,000 years through 100 reincarnations, she couldn't even compete with a baby boy. It felt like a life wasted. Seeing the legend of the 9-monster tattoo, a phenomenon unseen for eons, she lost her composure and nearly succumbed to inner demons. She managed to force her body to complete the fusion of the heavenly sun power, but the effort left her with severe internal injuries. With a sudden cough, her internal energy recoiled, and she spat out another mouthful of blood before rolling her eyes and fainting from sheer frustration. Li Hongtian could only sigh helplessly and shake his head. It seemed the great ancestor was simply born at the wrong time. Perhaps if she had been born a few years later, she wouldn't have had to face this little monster. Though, to be honest, she still wouldn't be his match. Our young protagonist truly possesses the talent to shake the earth. High above, a sphere of scorching light completely envelopes him. The power of the heavenly sun pours through his 36,000 pores, soaking into his skin and saturating every single cell in his body. Under the intense heat of the solar fire, his entire being becomes scalding hot. Any ordinary person would have been instantly incinerated by such power. They would have been reduced to ashes in a heartbeat. Even his sister, with her primordial foundation, couldn't merge with such overbearing solar energy. But he possesses the perfected eternal immortal demon body, and his physical form is terrifyingly robust. For him, this fusion is entirely possible. The solar fire continues to seep into his body like a great furnace, growing hotter and hotter with every passing second. Even with the immortal demon body, the fusion process is excruciatingly painful. But we must remember exactly who he is. His willpower is immense. After all, few ordinary souls could endure sweeping the floors of the underworld for 1,000 years. His body screams in pain. Yet he grits his teeth and refuses to let out even a single whimper as more solar fire is absorbed, tempering his body once again. He is being raised to an entirely new, terrifying level of existence. His infant body glows with a deep crimson light, like red-hot iron in a forge. Every cell and every internal organ is tempered to the absolute limit. Nearly an hour passes in this intense state of transformation. Finally, the sphere of light surrounding him begins to fade, and a cluster of golden flames appears within his left dantian. As he felt the aura of that flame, he was overjoyed. It was the 9-sun immortal fire, and he was only a month old. To control the power of an immortal fire so early was staggering. Li Chenxi had wanted the heavenly sun axe largely for one reason. She had hoped to obtain a heavenly sun fire seed, a mere spark that would require slow cultivation and the absorption of external flames. Only then could it evolve into a true immortal fire. But by claiming the 9-sun heavenly sun axe, his divine body was not only strengthened, he also directly obtained a complete 9-sun immortal fire, a flame condensed from the fusion of 9 suns. It was 100 times more powerful than a standard heavenly sun fire, capable of incinerating all things and serving as a terrifying trump card. If anyone dared to provoke him, a single toss of this fire would solve the problem instantly. This full moon ritual had been quite a success. The greatest gain was the 9-sun fire, followed by his divine body being tempered by solar flames to an almost inconceivable degree. As he descended back onto the altar, the many disciples of the Li family raised their voices in a thunderous roar. Divine Sun, Divine Sun. They had witnessed his power once again and were now certain that in the near future, he was destined to become a supreme expert. He would lead the Li family to a new era of glory. We fast forward 3 years, to a spacious courtyard where flowers are in full bloom. Several colorful butterflies dance around the blossoms, and near a bamboo pavilion, we see 2 children standing together. The young boy has large, bright eyes and a handsome face. One can tell he will grow into a truly elegant young master. The girl has fair skin and chubby, adorable cheeks. The boy reaches out his hand, inviting a small visitor to land. A gray butterfly settles on his palm. He points out the patterns on its back to his sister, noting they look like hemp thread. He tells her he's given it a lovely name, Yamade, and holds it up to her. Her only response, however, is a blunt, boring. Li Chenxi pushes his hand away, and the startled butterfly immediately takes flight. He calls out to it, but it's gone. He finds himself a bit speechless. Usually, little girls enjoy things like butterflies and flowers, don't they? But his sister is a special case. Even at this age, she only cares for blades and swords. Who would dare marry her later? 3 years have passed, and both children have grown significantly. They can now run, jump, and even climb onto the roof to play. With the time for cultivation finally approaching, he was filled with anticipation, eager to see just how fast his eternal immortal demon divine body could progress. The heavy, rhythmic sound of footsteps echoed as Li Hongtian approached the two children. To be honest, the man always had a certain presence about him. He told them that since they had just turned 3, they wouldn't start training yet. Instead, he was taking them somewhere special. Naturally, the boy asked where. He looked up at the burly, middle-aged man, reminding him of the promise that cultivation would begin the moment they reached their 3rd birthday. Li Hongtian knelt down, explaining that there was something far more important than training at this very moment. Pacing, it seems, is everything. He gently ruffled the boy's hair. Both children had learned to speak long ago and were exceptionally bright, which, for Li Qinxi, made perfect sense. After all, she was a soul who had lived for 100,000 years, but for a 3-year-old boy to be this brilliant was truly unexpected. The family simply attributed this genius to the influence of the eternal immortal demon divine body. With such a physique, being a bit clever seemed only natural. The Li family estate was as vast as a city, and in the backyard sat a massive training ground spanning over 1,000 acres. It was quite the playground. Beside it stood a stone monument reaching 100 chang into the sky, carved with bold characters, the eternal divine body ranking. Li Hongtian carried a child in each arm as they approached the monolith. He explained that they could now attempt to activate the stone and make their mark. In the world of cultivation, there exists a legendary list known as the Eternal Divine Ranking, and today was their chance to join it. The ranking tests many attributes, such as divine power and physique. Anyone capable of making the list is granted a secret, heavenly opportunity. If one grasps that chance, they can soar to the heavens. However, there is one strict requirement. The challenger must be at least 3 years old. There are many categories within the Eternal Divine Ranking, and the one standing before them specifically measured the strength of one's divine body. Under normal circumstances, both he and Li Qinxi would have made the list easily, but they had been forced to wait until they reached the proper age. He had noticed the monument from a distance and felt an immediate surge of interest. With his unique physique, he felt he could aim for the very top. The ranking is determined by a comprehensive evaluation of one's qualities. For someone like Li Qinxi, the test would be quite thorough. The stone would analyze her primordial earth constitution and her supreme foundation, combining these treasures to determine her overall strength. The higher the quality, the easier it is to climb the Eternal Divine Ranking. He tilted his head back, staring up at the towering stone in silent challenge. We look toward the small characters at the base of the monument, where Yi Tianfan is listed as the top ranker with his desolate ancient saint body. The second rank belongs to Jun Wuming and his Saint Womb body, while the third is held by Ji Buhui, possessor of the Supreme Foundation. The ranking only records the strongest 100 individuals. If a newcomer manages to climb onto the list, the person previously in the 100th spot is automatically removed. Furthermore, one can only remain on the list for 10,000 years. After that, they are removed. Seeing the name Yi Tianfan, he felt a flicker of memory. He had encountered this eternal ranking in his previous life. It wasn't just here at the Li family estate. These monuments are scattered everywhere, recording not just those from the immortal realm, but every cultivator across the vast reaches of existence. Millions compete for these 100 spots, and reaching the top is a monumental feat. To be number 1 is to be the strongest among millions. More importantly, making the list grants one the right to enter the eternal divine domain. The divine domain is a place of immense opportunity. During his time signing in within the underworld, he had acquired many ancient records about it. According to those texts, this was the dwelling place of gods in ancient times, a truly fascinating thought, to be honest. Many treasures left by those gods remain there. With enough luck, a single encounter in that domain is enough to dominate the 3 realms. The 3 realms is the collective name for the immortal, heavenly, and demon realms, rather than just 3 individual worlds. There are actually 3,000 smaller worlds that make up the immortal realm. He looked at the base of the stone, a hint of doubt in his eyes. The monument had existed for millions of years, yet he wondered why there was no Dao luck present. With his system, he could see such things. The stronger the Dao luck, the better the rewards from signing in. Under normal circumstances, an object this old should be overflowing with it. The longer a monument exists, the richer its Dao luck should become. Yet, as we see, this particular stone seemed strangely empty. Perhaps the luck it accumulated wasn't stored here, but was instead gathered within the eternal divine domain itself. That domain has existed for an eternity and would be an incredible place to sign in. He began walking toward the stone to begin his test. However, seeing this, Li Qinxi grew anxious and suddenly pulled him back, refusing to let him step forward first. She insisted that as the elder sister, she should go first. He raised an eyebrow, wondering why the order even mattered since she was destined to lose. He was destined to take the top spot. After all, his eternal demon god body was far superior to Li Qinxi's 2 constitutions. They weren't even in the same league, which left Li Qinxi gritting her teeth in frustration, determined to claim the first rank herself. When a cultivator ascends the eternal ranking, they are granted a reward known as the Eternal Divine Ruler. The quality of this reward depends on one's initial rank, and the prize for first place is naturally far better than that for second. She believed that if she went first, she could secure the top spot before he had a chance to surpass her. With her primordial earth womb, she was certain she could reach the summit and temporarily sit upon the throne of the number one ranker. By claiming the first place reward now and letting him take it later, they could maximize their gains, a clever bit of sibling strategy. This was the most efficient way to profit, and Li Qinxi had even larger plans in mind for their future. She was eyeing the opportunities within the eternal divine domain, which required a first-place finish to enter smoothly. Thus, she had to go first. He wasn't having it, though, insisting that as the brother, he should lead. He turned and began walking toward the stone monument. Li Qinxi pulled at the boy's arm with all her might, only to find that his strength was far beyond what she expected. Even 9 oxen couldn't match his sheer willpower as he left deep drag marks in the dirt. Then, she offered him a deal, a celestial deer leg. He suggested testing it out first. Left with no other choice, he had to offer his annoying younger brother some benefits just to get him to stop. At the mention of the celestial deer leg, he stopped dead in his tracks. These creatures are incredibly rare in the immortal realm. They are as scarce as phoenixes or dragons, and their meat is famously tender and delicious. A rare delicacy, to be sure. He had tasted a piece at his 3rd birthday feast and had been obsessed ever since. Just hearing about it made his mouth water. He asked if she was serious, and of course, she was. Li Qinxi tapped her spatial pouch, and a massive deer leg thudded onto the ground. It really was a celestial deer leg. His eyes lit up instantly. Under the temptation of such a snack, his resolve crumbled completely. He wondered where she had found one so large. A leg measuring 3 meters long was a truly extraordinary find. It clearly belonged to a great beast that had cultivated for thousands of years, a creature that is notoriously difficult to hunt. The meat was rich with spiritual energy, capable of nourishing the body and providing a significant boost to one's cultivation. If a mortal took even a single bite of celestial deer, they could extend their life by years. Eating it regularly could even transform their constitution. Naturally, we assume these gifts came from their father, as Li Qinxi glanced back at the middle-aged man, who gave a slight nod. He decided that for the sake of those deer legs, he would let her test first. After all, the order didn't truly matter to him. He told himself he would still claim the top spot eventually, so he might as well let his sister enjoy the feeling of being number one for a moment. With a quick swipe of his small hand, he stored the leg inside his spatial ring, a gift from Li Hongtian with an immense internal capacity. It was large enough to hold a mountain of snacks, proving that a great family like the Li clan was indeed quite wealthy. Li Qinxi breathed a sigh of relief. Over the last 3 years, she had noticed that her brother was quite the glutton, especially for rare delicacies. A celestial deer leg was precious, but using it to secure the first-place rank on the Eternal God Body ranking was a bargain, really. Even if she only held the position briefly, she would receive the first-place reward, and nothing that happened afterward could take that away. As Li Qinxi walked toward the stone monument, the boy approached Li Hongtian, looking up with a slightly pouting, depressed expression. He told his father he wanted celestial deer meat too, surprised that the Li family could even obtain such a legendary prize. Transporting such goods from the desolate heaven realm would cost far more than the meat itself, a logistical nightmare, to be honest. Li Hongtian felt a massive headache coming on. In reality, he hadn't been the one to give Li Qinxi that deer leg at all. It had come from her primordial heaven and earth tower, a powerful treasure fused with her soul that persists through hundreds of reincarnations. Everything she had collected across her past lives remained with her, growing into a vast hoard of treasures with every rebirth. Whenever Li Qinxi produced a treasure, she claimed the Li family gave it to her, which was a clever way to avoid any unwanted suspicion. This, however, left Li Hongtian in a difficult spot. He knelt down and gently pinched the boy's cheek, trying to soothe him. He promised Li Hong he would find him some deer meat, whispering that while he had to favor Li Qinxi publicly, he would secretly bring him better gifts. He struggled with how to explain the situation, as he couldn't exactly reveal that his daughter was a reincarnated ancestor with her own private armory. Everything belonged to the old man. Really, over the last 3 years, he had frequently taken treasures from the ancestral vault to support them. He nodded in agreement as we see them approach the Eternal Stone Monument, located right next to the training grounds where many disciples were practicing. Seeing the clan leader arrive with the divine son and daughter to test their physiques, the crowd gathered around with intense curiosity. They formed layer upon layer, surrounding the area until it was completely packed, all eager to see the children test their divine bodies. The anticipation was palpable, though many felt the outcome was obvious. The divine son would surely claim the top spot. The Li family was finally about to see someone reach the summit, and everyone wondered what kind of eternal divine gifts they might receive. After all, climbing the divine ranking is no small feat, requiring one to compete against tens of millions of geniuses. As Li Qinxi stepped before the monument, a soft glow began to emanate from her hand, signaling the start of the trial. She pressed her palm against the base, and with a low hum, the stone vibrated as it sensed the power of her divine physique. Terrifying waves of energy surged from the monument toward the heavens, manifesting a mystical and wondrous vision in the sky above. Within the illusion, a vast expanse of primordial purple mist appeared, nurturing a divine body that radiated an overwhelming, ancient aura. Beside that body lay a bone shimmering with brilliant golden light, covered in complex, gray patterns that were difficult for the mind to grasp. Even a single glance at it made the mortals feel a world-destroying power, leaving the Li clansmen staring upward in absolute shock. They marveled at the sight, wondering how terrifying a physique born from primordial mist could truly be, or what that bone represented. The sheer strength of it was staggering, proving she was indeed a divine daughter worthy of the eternal stone monument's recognition. The monument proceeded to display both of Li Chinxi's divine physiques in their full glory, releasing a concentrated wisp of energy toward her. It merged into her forehead, and a voice of immense majesty and ancient authority echoed within her mind like a thunderclap. It declared her the supreme peak of the eternal divine body ranking, announcing that her name would now be carved at the very top. However, Li Chinxi quickly communicated with the voice, choosing to hide her true identity and use the name Musi instead. To be honest, the name Li Chinxi was far too famous from 100,000 years ago, enough to make even demons weep with terror. If her name appeared on the Eternal Stone Monument exactly as it was 100,000 years ago, it would surely draw far too much unwanted attention. Those old monsters who have lived for hundreds of millennia would certainly grow suspicious, and they might even decide to cause her some serious trouble. At the moment, her strength is far too weak to protect herself. Being targeted by those ancient beings would mean a silent and certain end. And so, she decided it was better to remain anonymous, waiting for the day she possesses the power to look down upon the heavens and earth. Having endured 100,000 years already, she didn't mind this brief wait, and as her wish was granted, the monument began to rumble violently. A golden name slowly materialized at the very top of the list. Musi, the number 1 on the divine body ranking, possessing the primordial emperor fetus and supreme emperor bone. The former first and second place names were forced down a rank, leaving Yi Tianfan as the new number 2 on the divine body ranking. He possessed the desolate ancient holy body and supreme bone, followed by Jun Wuming, who now sat at the 3rd spot. We see that across the 3 realms, there are 10,000 of these eternal divine body monuments, all connected to this single moment. Simultaneously, every single one of those 10,000 monuments began to manifest a strange and terrifying phenomenon for all to see. One after another, terrifying auras shot into the sky, transforming into mystical visions that painted a wondrous scene across the clouds. Within that illusion was the endless primordial purple mist nurturing the emperor fetus, accompanied by the shimmering supreme emperor bone. The 3 realms trembled at the sight, and within the 3,000 small worlds, many ancient clans and powerful sects witnessed this incredible display. They were all left utterly stunned by the vision, wondering if this could truly be the legendary primordial emperor fetus they had only heard of. The mysterious patterns on that bone reminded them of a supreme emperor bone, something far stronger than a standard supreme bone, much to the Yi family's dismay. It seemed the Yi family could no longer hold the top spot, as 2 supreme treasures were now remarkably possessed by a single person. This individual was destined for a meteoric rise, as either one of those treasures alone would be enough to dominate an entire era. Combined, they proved this person possessed the strength to stand alone throughout history, leaving the ancient clans green with envy. If such a peerless genius were to appear in their own ranks, they felt their ancestral graves would practically glow with divine favor. Even in the desolate heaven ancient realm, a vast world supported by the heavens themselves, 10,000 monuments stood as witnesses to this change. The Yi family is one of the ancient clans with an incredibly long history, spanning over 1,000,000 years, and they once held the top spot on the divine body ranking. Yi Tianfan is the current patriarch, also known as Emperor Yi, and we find him deep within the Yi family's ancestral lands. A man with disheveled hair suddenly opens his eyes, and within those pupils, a truly terrifying light begins to flicker. He wonders who would dare steal his position. The primordial emperor fetus and supreme emperor bone. Now that is interesting. These are treasures that even he covets, and a dark desire to seize them begins to take root in his heart. To be honest, who wouldn't want them? He imagines that if he could dig out that supreme emperor bone and graft it onto himself, his strength would instantly reach a whole new level. But who is this Musi? Among the ancient clans, the Mu surname is extremely rare, leading him to suspect it might be a fake name. He immediately orders his subordinates to investigate. He needs to know which realm this Musi comes from. You see, every time the eternal divine ranking changes, it inevitably leads to a storm of blood and violence. Those who make it onto the ranking become targets for every major power to recruit, and if they can't be recruited, they are often hunted down or destroyed. Such is the cold reality of the 3 realms. Meanwhile, in the desolate heaven ancient realm, the Li family rules over a vast territory after 10,000 years of growth. Their influence is truly immense, and in the backyard of the Li estate lies a restricted area known as the Eternal Manor. Row after row of eternal stone monuments stand within the manor. If one were to count them, there are several hundred in total. It is quite rare even for an ancient clan to house so many of these monuments, and the younger members of the Lee family are often left puzzled. They don't understand why so much valuable land is wasted on a manor that seems to serve no practical purpose. After all, appearing on the Eternal Divine ranking is nearly impossible. But just then, one of the monuments in the manor begins to manifest a strange vision. The moment the vision appears, an elder with a terrifying aura manifests before the stone, his eyes fixed intently on the very first line. As he reads the words Primordial Emperor Fetus and Supreme Emperor Bone, his expression grows increasingly agitated, especially when he sees the name Muzi. This confirms his deepest suspicions. With tears of joy in his eyes and a choked voice, he whispers that after 100,000 years, the ancestress has finally reincarnated. This elder is the oldest ancestor of the Lee family, a man who has been around since the era when Empress Chinzi first established their clan. He is also one of the very few people who knows the truth about the Empress's reincarnation, as Lee Chinzi had personally spoken to him about it long ago. After 100 reincarnations, she would return with peerless talent to top every Eternal Divine ranking, all while using a pseudonym to hide her rebirth. Her surname is Lee, which when split apart, becomes the characters Mu and Z, and combined with that powerful divine body, the truth is clear. The ancestor is instantly certain that this person is none other than the ancestress. Overcome with emotion, old ancestor Piao Miao laughs toward the heavens. He shouts that her talent stands alone across the ages, not just for 10,000 years, but perhaps for 1,000,000 years to come. He believes no one can surpass her. Even the primordial Emperor Fetus alone would have been enough to crush that Yi Tian fan. Now, with the Supreme Emperor Bone added to the mix, absolutely no one can hope to match the ancestress's natural gifts. She is, quite simply, the #1 person in all of history. Feeling grand, old ancestor Piao Miao grabs the purple jade wine gourd at his waist. He takes several deep gulps as we return to the Lee family, where our focus shifts to that intense red glow from earlier. This is the Eternal Divine Pool, and a red glow signifies the highest level possible, granting the power to reach a very specific destination. It allows entry into the core area of the Eternal Divine Realm, a place hidden with countless opportunities that only those with the pool can access. To enter the realm, one must first make it onto the Eternal Divine ranking to earn a pool, though the rewards vary by rank. Naturally, the pool awarded to the first-place finisher is the most powerful of them all, which explains a great deal about the current situation. Lee Chinzi rushed to test before the protagonist specifically to seize that top spot and claim the best pool. Being second simply wouldn't do. Without that red pool reward, her entire future plan would fall apart. After finishing her test, Lee Chinzi walks back to Li Hongtian's side. The protagonist raises an eyebrow and asks with a smirk if it feels good for his little sister to be #1 for a change. He jokingly suggests waiting until tomorrow for his own test, so she can enjoy the spotlight for a day, but she simply turns away, bored. She finds him incredibly annoying for bringing that up. She's willing to let him have this specific ranking, but she's certain he won't win the next ones. There are many Eternal Divine rankings, and the Divine Ladder is just the first one available for testing at this stage. Through her 100 lives of reincarnation, she has spent 100,000 years preparing specifically to dominate these various rankings. In her mind, there is no way a newborn brat could ever compare to that kind of experience, or so she tells herself, anyway. He decides that since he must seize a second #1 title to save and reshape his mother's womb, and since she won't ask for help, he will test right now. We see him walk the few steps to the stone tablet and place his small hand upon it, as every member of the Lee family holds their collective breath. Their eyes are fixed intently on the stone, desperate to witness exactly what kind of vision the eternal, immortal demon divine body will manifest. Suddenly, the stone tablet begins to shake violently, and under its immense influence, the entire Lee family estate starts to tremble as well. Terrifying streaks of aura surge toward the heavens, where a mystical and wondrous scene begins to take shape within the clouds. The vision reveals an ethereal, misty world shrouded in an endless, suffocating darkness. All at once, figures of ancient emperors and demon gods appear within the space, standing so close together that their numbers seem infinite. They stretch as far as the eye can see, and then, in unison, these immortals and demons kneel toward the center of the world. At the heart of this realm stands a deity 10,000 feet tall, his left side shimmering with golden light, while his right side glows with a dark, obsidian luster. With a single movement from this god, thousands of immortals and demons prostrate themselves, bowing their heads in absolute, pious devotion. It is a scene of magnificent grandeur, making it clear to anyone watching that this deity possesses a truly terrifying level of power. This is the sovereign of all immortals and demons, and the Lee family members below are utterly stunned by the heart-stopping sight. They wonder if this is the true power of the eternal, immortal demon divine body, a force so great that thousands of gods must kneel before it. They realize that if the divine son is allowed to grow, he will surely command all immortals and demons, ensuring the Leaf family's rise to glory. Some even hope to reach the prosperity of 100,000 years ago, noting that while the girl's vision was strong, it lacked this level of awe. To be honest, the gap between the two only becomes obvious once you see them side by side like this. The stone tablet releases a surge of energy that flows into his mind, initiating a direct spiritual communication with him. It acknowledges him as the leader of the eternal divine bodies and asks if he wishes to engrave his name at the top or use a pseudonym. He remembers his little sister using the fake name, Musi, just moments ago. She took first place, but no one actually knows who she is. He looks up, his eyes flashing with golden light, thinking of how he has already endured 1,000 years of patience in the underworld. He decides he will no longer endure in silence. In this life, he must leave a name that lasts for eternity and earns the worship of billions. After all, wasn't his 1,000-year patience in the underworld specifically for the sake of one day achieving eternal glory? With his decision made, a new line of large characters appears at the very top of the stone tablet. Number 1 Divine Body, Li Heng. Upon seeing the name of the Divine Son engraved above the eternal immortal demon Divine Body, every member of the Leaf family erupts in excitement. Some raise their arms high, shouting that the Divine Son's bravery is unmatched and that the Leaf family name will surely endure forever. They wonder who could possibly stand against him, for while the Divine Daughter took first place earlier, she used a fake name. Back then, no one knew she belonged to the Leaf family, which felt somewhat stifling despite her power, but now, things are different. With Li Heng's name clearly carved upon the eternal stone tablet for all to admire, their family will undoubtedly be revered by every major power. This realization makes the blood of the clansmen boil with pride, sending their spirits to an absolute peak of joy across the 3,000 small worlds. At that same moment, countless eternal stone tablets everywhere manifest the divine vision, leaving innumerable cultivators utterly stunned. They find themselves wondering if the eternal immortal demon divine body is truly the one ranked first among all 36,000 types. It is a terrifying sight to see a divine body command ancient demons, leaving everyone to wonder just who this Li Heng actually is. They are baffled as to why. So shortly after Musi appeared, someone else has already claimed the top spot on the divine body ranking. The world assumed Musi held the ultimate divine body and would dominate for 10,000 years, yet not even an hour has passed. The ranking has changed hands again as Li Heng emerges with peerless talent, completely overshadowing Musi's previous achievement. This eternal immortal demon divine body is, without a doubt, the most powerful existence within the 3 realms. Meanwhile, in the forbidden grounds of the Yi family, a man with disheveled hair is startled out of his meditation by the sudden vision. Even as a great emperor who has seen countless powerful bodies, he finds himself breathless at the sight of the immortal demon vision. He had always been told that since the ancient era, the immortal demon divine body had ceased to exist in this world. It seems that even a great emperor is not exempt from shock, as one wrong move in the face of such a catastrophe could lead to his downfall. Countless ancient demons who once shook the heavens fell during that great catastrophe, and in our current era, the 3 realms are far weaker than they were in ancient times. If the catastrophe truly returns, no one will have the faith to survive. A middle-aged man appears in the forbidden grounds. It is the current head of the Yi family, Yi Zudi, who bows respectfully. The great emperor Yi asks if he knows the origin of this vision, but the clan leader only raises his head slightly, his voice cautious. He mentions that he did some investigating a while ago regarding the Li family within the longevity realm. A peerless genius has appeared there, and news will spread soon. Hearing this, the emperor's eyes narrow, sharp as blades. He orders an immediate investigation into the Li family, and with a quick bow, the clan leader vanishes from the doorway. The emperor taps his fingers on the desk with a rhythmic sound, reflecting on how, for the last 100,000 years, the Li family seemed to be preparing something, perhaps all for the sake of this one divine son. Their movements were subtle, but the Yi family's influence is vast, and they noticed the Li family's strange behavior long ago. Whenever a divine son appeared, the emperor would send treasures to the longevity realm, likely preparing resources to nurture a specific descendant. Now, the emergence of the eternal immortal demon divine body confirms his suspicions. If his theory is correct, the Li family's ambitions are massive. While they are a powerful ancient clan, the Yi family is even more terrifying. They are known as ancient families, a title reserved only for those powers that have endured for over 1,000,000 years. The Li family also has great emperors backing them, so trying to move against their people would come at a heavy price. Meanwhile, we see someone drinking joyfully from a purple jade gourd, wine spilling onto his clothes as he laughs in pure delight. He intends to drink his fill today, but suddenly, the stone tablet shakes violently as a terrifying aura surges toward the sky. A divine vision forms in the heavens, and as the ranking on the tablet shifts, the old man's hands freeze in midair. His gourd tilts, and precious immortal wine pours onto the ground like pearls, yet he is too stunned to even notice. Normally, wasting such rare wine would have broken his heart, but in this moment, his mind is entirely elsewhere. But this time, he ignores the spilled immortal wine entirely, his gaze fixed solely on the top of the stone tablet. The first place on the divine body ranking has changed. Zudi had only held that top spot for a single hour, making this, without a doubt, the fastest fall from a ranking in history. According to his earlier guesses, no one should have been able to shake Zudi's position for at least 10,000 years. He expected that dominance to last for centuries to come. Yet, who could have imagined that change would arrive so swiftly? Zudi had barely settled into his rank before someone snatched the top spot away. The eternal, immortal demon divine body, Li Heng. He suddenly remembers that the boy born alongside Zudi also had a brother named Li Heng. Could it be that this Li Heng is also a member of the Li family? It seems almost too much of a coincidence, even for this world. Communication between the desolate Heaven Valley and the lower realms is difficult, requiring a specialized message system that comes at a very high cost. Furthermore, the messages cannot be too long. Since Zudi's birth, they had only communicated with the Longevity Realms Li family once. At the time, they only asked for news regarding Zudi, and the information sent back from the Li family mentioned the name Li Heng only briefly. They said his talent was decent, but didn't elaborate. Ancestor Pianio wasn't interested in him then, so he didn't bother to ask for more details. But looking at the current situation, calling this talent decent is a massive understatement. It is terrifying. Zudi prepared for 100,000 years, only to finally claim the throne of the divine body ranking. Yet a newborn baby has already crushed him. If word of this got out, the world would never stop laughing. The old man decides he must use the message system again to investigate this Li Heng and see if he truly belongs to the family. After all, with so many people in the world, a shared name is common. It would be quite embarrassing if this turned out to be a misunderstanding. With that thought, Ancestor Pianio heads toward the Forbidden Grounds. Meanwhile, back at the Li family training grounds in the Longevity Realm, the stone tablet trembles. A beam of 7-colored light descends from the sky and lands directly on Li Heng. When Li Qinxi sees this radiant glow, her eyes widen in shock. She realizes with a start that the eternal divine pool actually possesses 7 colors. According to the information she had gathered previously, these ancient opportunities were divided into 5 colors: white, silver, gold, purple, and red, all depending on one's position on the ranking. The color of the divine pool light changes based on rank. Those placed between 51st and 100th receive a white light. Those between 31st and 50th receive silver, while the ranks from 11th to 30th are granted a golden glow. Ranks 2 through 10 receive a purple light, and the first place is traditionally red. She had never heard of a 7-colored glow. This clearly suggests that the eternal divine pool within this light is far more powerful than even the red one. Li Qinxi considers a new possibility. Perhaps her brother's eternal immortal demon divine body has reached a true state of perfection. Previous champions held the title, but they were merely stronger than the rest, rather than reaching the absolute limit of potential. Only upon reaching that true peak does the 7-colored divine pool finally reveal itself to the world. She feels certain her guess is correct, but wonders what opportunities this pool holds after her own 100,000 years of preparation. Her entire goal was to use her peerless talent to top the rankings and claim that coveted red divine pool. Doing so would unlock a secret treasure within the eternal divine realm, the very key to becoming an eternal great emperor. She had collected many treasures for this purpose, yet never imagined the pool could manifest in 7 colors. Quite a surprise, really. Perhaps this color is linked to the path of the great emperor. She decides she must have a serious talk with this little brother of hers. Since a new 7-colored pool has appeared, we see Li Heng standing still, closing his eyes to investigate the change. As the 7-colored light merges into his body, a new object appears in his mind, a tablet shimmering with radiant, mystical patterns. One look is enough to know it is no ordinary item. It matches the descriptions of the 7-colored pool found in ancient texts. He had previously obtained ancient records through his check-ins, which contained detailed information and even illustrations of these pools. These records are far more detailed than the legends circulating in the 3 realms, noting that there are actually 6 possible colors. Only by reaching the absolute limit of the eternal foundation can one obtain the 7-colored pool and this specific divine key. This key can open a great gate within the divine realm to grant a supreme treasure that no other pool can provide. Just as he receives the key, a notification chimes in his mind, congratulating him on reaching the pinnacle of the eternal foundation. He has unlocked the eternal check-in mode, which allows him to absorb eternal chi to enhance his rewards. The more eternal chi he absorbs, the higher his reward multiplier will climb, a very convenient development, to be sure. He is genuinely surprised to find such a check-in mode, his eyes shining with excitement as he reads the system's description. From now on, check-ins can grant multiplied rewards instead of just a single one, unlike his previous experiences in the underworld. In the past, each location allowed only one check-in for one reward, but now, a single check-in will yield far more. He had never heard of this eternal chi before, though judging by the name, it likely has something to do with the eternal tablet. Returning his consciousness to reality, we see him looking the eternal tablet over from top to bottom, searching for any sign of it. He wonders why he can't find it. According to his theory, if the tablet held eternal chi, it should be visible to him now. It should be like the system's Taoist energy, invisible without the system. So he even takes a curious lap around the tablet. Finding nothing special there, he realizes the eternal chi isn't on the tablet itself, but must be within the eternal divine realm. That vast, boundless realm was once the home of the gods, so it makes perfect sense for it to contain such energy. He decides he must investigate the eternal divine realm, and now that he has the divine pool, he finally has entry. However, since there is a time limit and each pool can only be used once, he needs to plan his timing very carefully. Imagine the scene. The scorching afternoon sun bakes the earth, and the air is so hot it makes one feel restless. Inside a bamboo pavilion, Li Chenxi sits on a bench gazing at the lotus flowers while Li Hongtian stands nearby. A specialized barrier envelopes the pavilion, completely isolating their voices, for even within the clan, they must remain cautious. Li Hongtian asks when she plans to enter the divine realm, and she calmly replies that she will go in 3 days. Li Hongtian looks quite worried, wondering if it might be too dangerous given the rumors of demonic beasts lurking inside. The divine realm was once the dwelling of gods, and though the gods are gone, some of those ancient beasts still remain. He worries that while she was once powerful, she is currently only a 3-year-old child who hasn't even begun formal cultivation. Li Chenxi, having visited the realm in her previous life, explains that those beasts do not typically attack humans unprovoked. As long as one avoids contact and remains peaceful, there is no danger, unless, of course, one is foolish enough to attack first. Only then would those demonic beasts view humans as enemies. Hearing this, Li Hongtian breathes a sigh of relief and stops trying to dissuade her. He trusts that his ancestor would never do anything without certainty, though he wonders what opportunities Li Hong might find with his own divine pool. It is the first time he has ever heard of a 7-color divine pool, and judging by the color, it is surely even rarer than Li Chenxi's. Li Chenxi narrows her eyes slightly, noting that the eternal divine realm contains many hidden treasures and secret chambers. She suspects that Li Heng's unique pool might even allow him to enter the very core of those ancient, hidden areas. To be honest, she is quite curious about this 7-colored divine pool herself as they prepare to enter the eternal divine realm. Her main goal is to find the miracle that will allow her to become the eternal great emperor, and this pool might be the key. She announces she will go to the realm with Li Hong, which leaves Li Hongtian stunned, worrying if the boy will be in danger. In his mind, he had planned for the boy to wait until he was 18 and sufficiently strong before exploring such a dangerous place. Li Chenxi calmly assures him there will be no problems if they go together, reminding him that each pool can only be used once. Li Hongtian worries that since their physical forms might vanish after leaving the pool, the children might run into trouble while wandering around. However, he realizes that having 2 people together means they can look out for one another, so he finally stops arguing. We move now to a charming little courtyard with 3 wings, where the godson and goddess each have their own separate rooms. Despite their young age, they live apart at the girl's specific request. A little later, a door is pushed gently open. As Li Chenxi steps into Li Heng's room, she is immediately greeted by the mouth-watering aroma of roasted meat coming from the window. The scent is drifting from a wooden table where Li Heng is holding a large piece of meat, taking a massive, satisfied bite. Li Chenxi gives her brother a cold look and huffs, remarking that he thinks of nothing but eating, now that his teeth have grown in. He raises an eyebrow, thinking of how those 1,000 years as a soul reaper in the underworld made him forget what food even tasted like. Having spent his first 2 years after reincarnation without teeth, he isn't about to waste a moment now that his baby teeth have arrived. In 3 days, she tells him quietly, he is to follow her to the eternal divine realm. Naturally, he asks why he should go with her. Li Heng picks up a piece of perfectly charred meat and pops it into his mouth, while she warns him that he is too small to go alone. Li Chenxi shifts her tactics to coaxing him like a child, seemingly forgetting that she is only a few hours older than he is. He looks at her with pure disdain when she claims seniority, but she insists with the tone of a big sister that she is indeed the elder. He tells her he needs to think about it, teasingly asking if she is simply too scared to go alone and needs his protection. As he speaks, he continues to stuff his face with the succulent meat, feeling a warm, nourishing energy surge from his stomach. This special dew-fed meat is incredibly rich in spiritual essence, which begins to flow through his meridians and nourish his entire body. Eating this regularly builds immense physical strength, and if one were to consume it for years, the effects would be truly extraordinary. Li Chenxi tries a different approach, suggesting that having 2 people means they can look out for one another during the journey. He considers this and decides it makes sense. His little sister is young and naive, so he might need to step in if things get dangerous. While he enjoys teasing her, it is all in good fun. Deep down, he knows that when real danger strikes, he cannot just stand by. As her brother, he decides to help, telling her that since she looks so desperate, he will go along to keep her safe. He warns her to be on her best behavior and not wander off, which earns him a cold, sharp huff from Li Chenxi. To be honest, she didn't look desperate at all. It seems he is simply imagining things, which is a dangerous habit indeed. Since he has agreed, she doesn't linger, simply telling him to find her in 3 days so they can enter the eternal divine realm together. She leaves without looking back, and after finishing the meat, Li Heng closes the windows and settles onto his meditation mat. In most cases, children only begin their true cultivation after the age of 12, once their bodies have matured sufficiently. However, those from great families use medicinal baths to strengthen their children's constitutions, allowing them to start as early as 7 or 8. But the godson and goddess of the Li family both possess divine bodies, meaning they can begin their journey at just 2 years old. To be safe, Li Hongtian decided they should wait until they are 3 to begin the first stage of cultivation, known as spirit qi. This stage involves sensing the spiritual energy between heaven and earth and drawing it into the body to be used as a foundation. By performing simple martial techniques, the process of absorbing spirit qi into the body also helps to gradually enhance one's physical constitution. We see Li Heng close his eyes, focusing his inner consciousness deep within a body that is quite different from that of a normal cultivator. With the immortal path on his left and the demonic on his right, he can perform both arts, allowing the two opposing forces to merge together. This fusion grants him infinite power, but to raise his realm, he must cultivate both paths simultaneously, unlike a normal practitioner. While others simply absorb enough spirit qi to reach the peak and break through to the body refining stage, his divine body demands more. Absorbing spirit qi alone isn't enough. He must also draw in demonic qi until both paths reach the absolute peak of the spirit qi realm. Only then can he break through to the next stage, as both are indispensable. With a flick of his wrist, a dark, mysterious box appears in his palm. Inside lies a pitch-black demonic qi pill, containing pure energy designed to rapidly advance one's progress on the demonic path. Demonic qi and yin qi are essentially the same energy under different names, and he hopes this single pill will provide a significant boost. For a normal demonic cultivator, this pill could bridge the gap from the first level all the way to the peak of the 10 spirit qi subrealms. After the 9th level, there is one final peak to conquer. He picks up the small, dark pill, which looks no larger than a bird's egg. However, it feels like dropping a tiny pebble into a vast reservoir. It creates a few ripples, but the water level hardly changes at all. The effect is surprisingly weak. He had expected a single pill to at least push him from the first level of qi condensation to the second. Instead, it only causes the demonic qi in his body to flicker slightly, leaving him far from a breakthrough. To advance, he needs much more. He must absorb enough energy to reach a critical breaking point. With another flick of his wrist, he decides to try a more direct approach. A 3-foot-long wooden chest appears on the floor, packed with 1,000 demonic qi pills. Surely, he thinks, this will be enough. Back when the underworld was being relocated, these pills were common, and his younger brother had conveniently sorted them all into one place. This time, he grabs a large handful, 7 or 8 pills at once, and swallows them all without a second thought. The surging demonic qi spreads through the right side of his body, yet even after absorbing so much, the gap to the next level remains vast. And so, he begins grabbing the pills by the handful, stuffing them into his mouth as if they were nothing more than ordinary snacks. To an outside observer, it might look as if he were simply snacking on candy. However, after nearly 100 pills, his demonic body finally feels a surge of growth. He concentrates his breath, focusing the demonic qi into a sudden, powerful palm strike. At last, he breaks through to the second level of qi condensation. Even he hadn't expected his demonic body to consume so many pills. For a normal cultivator, a single pill is usually enough to reach the peak. Yet here we see that while one pill suffices for others, Li Heng required 100 just to make a single step forward. In terms of the sheer volume of demonic qi stored within him, he is easily 1,000 times stronger than any ordinary practitioner. And this is only the first realm. As his strength increases, his physical constitution will only continue to grow more formidable. Eventually, he will be tens of thousands of times stronger than his peers. Next, he consumes another 150 pills to push further. He reaches the 3rd level. Then, with 200 more pills, the 4th, another 250, and he hits the 5th level. After 300 more pills, he reaches the 6th level, and the entire chest of demonic qi pills is finally empty. Not that it matters, of course. He has plenty of other demonic pills to burn through. These were merely a drop in the bucket compared to his vast collection. It is a small price to pay. A stronger body naturally requires many times more resources to advance, but the payoff is worth it. The strength he gains is perfectly proportional to the cost. By the time he finishes devouring the 1,000th pill, the next morning has already arrived. The sun is high now, and a single beam of light filters through the cracks in the window, bringing a faint glow into the room. He doesn't leave the room, choosing instead to continue his cultivation. Thanks to his powerful physique, a night of training leaves him with no fatigue at all. On the contrary, he feels refreshed as his body grows stronger, a sensation that ordinary mortals could never truly understand. With a heavy thud, another long black wooden chest appears on the floor, releasing a thick, overflowing mist of demonic chi as the lid opens. Inside are rows of demonic pills the size of bird eggs. He estimates there are at least 1,000 of these great demonic chi pills. The energy within them is far more refined. One of these is worth 10 ordinary pills. For a normal chi condensation cultivator, this would be dangerous. To be perfectly honest, taking one of these prematurely would likely cause a normal person's body to explode. One usually needs to be in the body refining stage first. But Li Heng simply picks up a great demonic chi pill and takes a bite, feeling the powerful, majestic energy rush into him. As it slides down his throat, a single bite proves to be several times more potent than an entire ordinary demonic chi pill. He finds the experience of consuming these great demonic chi pills quite satisfying, swallowing them down in just a few quick gulps. If any demonic cultivators saw a 3-year-old child devouring these pills so recklessly, they would surely be frightened to death. He continues to munch on them as if they were mere apples, and after 30 pills, the demonic chi within him surges once more. With a sudden boom, he reaches the 7th level of chi condensation, watching as the supply in the chest steadily dwindles. The sun sets in the west and rises again in the east. Suddenly, the room overflows with energy as his right side begins to transform. His body glows with an eerie black light as he reaches the peak of chi condensation. He stretches, his joints popping and cracking. The sound of his bones snapping into place is sharp, and he feels his physical strength and blood vitality grow 100 times stronger. We must remember that even without training, his divine body was already powerful. Increasing that foundation 100-fold is truly remarkable. That level of intensity is something no ordinary demonic cultivator could ever hope to match. He looks at his right hand and slowly makes a fist. He can feel an absolutely terrifying power contained within his small frame, the true potential of the eternal celestial demon body. It is even more formidable than he imagined. However, the peak of chi condensation is not the true limit. He must now refine that energy. In his previous life, having been born into an ordinary family, he only stumbled onto the path of cultivation by sheer luck. Back then, he had no idea that one could refine their chi further after reaching the peak. He only learned of it later through ancient texts. He knows now that to travel further on the path of immortality, he must condense and refine the energy stored within his body. In ancient times, the great beings who shook the heavens and earth all refined their chi to the absolute limit during this stage. There is even an eternal stone tablet that records the greatest geniuses in history. To even hope to appear on that ranking, one must refine the chi within their body at least 15 times. For now, his demonic body has reached its current peak. His plan is to bring his celestial body to the same peak before attempting the refinement process. With the right side finished, the left side of his celestial body remains untapped. He calmly puts the remaining great demonic chi pills back into his spatial ring. He then pulls out another mahogany chest, 3 feet long, filled with profound spirit pills that radiate a dense, spiritual aura. These are perfect for those in the chi condensation stage. Much like the demonic chi pills, taking just one is quite a boost. A single pill can push a cultivator from the first level to the peak. Within the family, only the most gifted direct descendants are even eligible to receive them, usually getting only 1 per year. Yet, inside this mahogany chest, there are over 1,000. If the other clansmen saw this, their hearts would skip a beat, or perhaps they would simply turn green with envy. With his previous experience fresh in mind, he grabs a handful and tosses them back, crunching on them like they were mere candy. After swallowing 7 or 8, his aura surges with a sudden boom, reaching the 2nd level. Soon, the entire chest of pills has been devoured, and his cultivation has climbed to the 6th level. As the first light of dawn spills into the courtyard, chasing away the night's chill, Li Chenxi stands waiting in silence. She wonders what is taking so long, as the hour has already passed. He steps out, feeling refreshed and alert after his session. He asks his younger sister why she has come to find him so early. Li Chenxi glares at him, her face cold as she realizes he has completely forgotten their appointment. He simply shrugs his shoulders. He explains that he stayed up too late, suggesting they leave now. To be honest, he was having such a good time eating pills that the matter of the eternal divine realm had slipped his mind entirely. Chenxi nods and produces a red divine token. She instructs him to activate it with her to enter the eternal divine realm, a world so vast it seems to have no end. Through these tokens, one can travel to that land, though they are restricted to only certain specific regions. Since they are using tokens from the same source, they will appear within the same spatial coordinates upon arrival. The two of them take out their respective tokens and apply a drop of blood, immediately feeling a strange, divine power pull at them. We see them enter a new world, a lush forest where the vegetation is vibrant and overflowing with spiritual energy. A small stream flows through the mountains, its waters shimmering with a crystal-clear light that sparkles like a trail of gemstones. As the two children appear by the creek and his vision clears, he takes a deep breath, feeling instantly rejuvenated by the air. He feels incredibly energized. It seems the eternal divine realm truly lives up to its name, as the air itself is saturated with such dense spiritual energy. Even without active cultivation, staying here for just 3 days would significantly improve one's physical constitution. He recalls the time he absorbed the spirit realm fetus, which emitted a vibrant green aura that bolstered his strength upon contact. However, the air in this place is far superior to that. In fact, the spiritual essence here is 7 or 8 times stronger than what the fetus released, which tells you everything you need to know about this realm. If one could live here permanently, they might become a powerhouse of heaven and earth without even trying. But, as we know, there is a catch. The eternal divine pool only allows them to remain for 3 days before they are automatically expelled by the pool's power. As he scans the surroundings, his eyes catch a brilliant golden light floating atop a nearby mountain peak. He wonders what that light could possibly be. Perhaps it is related to the eternal chi. After all, when he previously activated the eternal Thousand Paths mode and absorbed that energy, his multiplier increased. He decides he should head up there to see if he can absorb it. He asks his sister if she sees the golden light on that mountain. Li Chenxi looks toward the direction he is pointing, but aside from the clear blue sky above the peak, she sees nothing unusual. She jokingly asks if he's seeing stars, as there is no light there at all. His pupils contract as he realizes his suspicion was likely correct. It seems only he can see it. Since the mountain offers a high vantage point to observe the environment, he suggests they head up anyway. Li Chenxi agrees that climbing the mountain is a good idea, if only to determine their current location and decide where to go next. Each divine token corresponds to a specific area within the eternal divine realm, roughly a 10-mile radius, and they are restricted to that zone. He nods in agreement, secretly hoping the golden light is exactly what he thinks it is. If so, his system is in for a major upgrade. The hill wasn't particularly high, and soon, 2 small figures were seen ascending. They quickly reached the summit, where a plant glowing with a vibrant red light caught their attention, looking very much like a spirit mushroom. It was about 3 feet in diameter and entirely crimson, appearing as if it were burning in flames. Chenxi's eyes widened in complete shock. It was the Crimson Sun Immortal Racier. Even as a former empress who had seen countless treasures over 100,000 years, she was stunned. She had never imagined that a Crimson Sun Immortal Racier could grow to such a size, stretching 3 feet across in pure, solid red. It contained absolutely no impurities. If this treasure were taken back to the desolate ancient realm, it would be a different story entirely. It would undoubtedly cause rivers of blood to flow among immortal sections. It was an incredibly rare item used for body tempering. Furthermore, it contained the ultimate power of crimson fire, capable of nurturing a heavenly sun seed. Even a small piece would be enough to produce an immortal flame. If one could get their hands on it, their strength would undergo a world-shaking transformation. Hao Qiang's gaze, however, wasn't fixed on the plant itself, but on the space surrounding it. In his eyes, the view was quite different. He saw a layer of golden light surrounding the racier, and a system notification chimed in his mind, confirming he had found the eternal chi. The system instructed him to move within 1 chong of the energy to absorb it. He nodded inwardly. It was exactly as he suspected. He wondered why it was hidden right next to the Crimson Sun racier. Perhaps the growth of such a treasure had naturally attracted the eternal chi. It seemed highly likely, as the growth of a divine plant like this required absorbing the spiritual energy of the entire god domain. Over time, it had drawn the eternal chi toward it, gathering the energy in the immediate area. This led to a fascinating realization. Places containing eternal chi would usually be home to rare and heavenly treasures, a theory that filled his heart with genuine excitement. The eternal chi was easy to spot if one knew what to look for. He only had to follow the golden light to find these hidden wonders. Finding both the energy and a top-tier treasure was a stroke of luck. It was as if he had a personal GPS for the world's greatest riches. He could see them at a glance, and he noticed that beside the racier, there was not only eternal chi, but also an incredibly strong Tao rhythm. Its intensity was at least equivalent to the 12th level of hell, meaning this was a perfect spot to stop and check in with his system. Chenxi, assuming Li Heng lacked the experience to recognize such a rare find, decided to explain exactly what they were looking at. She told him this Crimson Sun racier was precious enough to nurture a heavenly sun seed, while the rest could be used for body tempering. We see her caution him to be careful, as rare immortal treasures are almost always guarded by some form of powerful demonic beast. The more valuable the treasure, the stronger the guardian, and with their current strength, they needed to avoid a direct confrontation if possible. Since she had brought Li Heng here, she felt responsible for his safety. Despite her occasionally sharp tongue, she truly cared for his well-being. Deep down, she was constantly worried about him. She told him they would approach slowly and stay on high alert. She warned him to retreat immediately if danger appeared, only moving for the treasure if it was safe. He simply nodded in understanding. As they moved forward, Chenxi took the lead, shielding him behind her so she could react first to any sudden threats. She was determined to protect her younger brother at all costs. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed from the nearby bushes. A massive python, nearly 10 feet long and incredibly thick, slithered out with startling speed toward the center of the clearing. With a few quick coils, it wrapped itself around the Crimson Sun racier to protect it. Chinzi froze instantly, her eyes fixed on the predator. She watched the serpent warily, noticing a silver bulge on its head, a clear sign that this was no ordinary snake, but a silver flood dragon. This was no mere serpent, but a flood dragon, and one that was clearly on the verge of transforming into a true dragon. Although it hadn't reached the level of an ancestral beast, it was still far beyond what a 3-year-old child could handle. Chinzi stopped her approach, and the silver dragon didn't attack. In this god domain, demonic beasts rarely strike humans first. They only retaliate if provoked. With a heavy heart, she told him they had to leave and abandoned the Crimson Sun racier. Without the means to defeat it, retreat was their only option. In the god domain, treasures are plenty, but strength is required to claim them. Li Heng, however, stared at the dragon and swallowed hard, wondering why on earth they would ever walk away from this. He imagined the dragon meat would be delicious. In his past life, he'd heard tales of its flavor but lacked the power to hunt one. Now that he had encountered a flood dragon, he figured it would make a decent meal. Yes, even now, he was thinking of his stomach. Chinzi tapped his shoulder gently, urging him to hurry before they angered the beast and made it impossible for anyone to return. She reminded him that death in the god domain is permanent. He simply told her to go, claiming he had a way to handle it. Even putting the food aside, he needed to get close to absorb the eternal qi and the Tao rhythm. He wasn't about to leave. With a casual wave of his small hand, a cluster of golden flames suddenly erupted from the center of his palm. The surrounding temperature skyrocketed instantly, causing the nearby plants to wither while the Crimson Sun racier glowed with red light. Sensing the terrifying power of the flames, the silver dragon turned to flee, but its crawling speed was no match for the flying fire. The golden sparks chased the dragon's tail and shot directly into its back with a sharp, searing hiss. The flames actually bored into the dragon's body, leaving it writhing in agony on the ground as its silver scales turned a bright, glowing red. Steam rose from its massive frame as its struggles grew weaker and weaker, until finally, the beast lay completely still. The rich aroma of roasted meat began to drift through the air. Li Heng took a deep sniff and swallowed hard. It smelled incredible. The 9-yang immortal fire was proving to be quite useful. Generally, flames are divided into 2 types, spirit fire and immortal fire. Spirit fire possesses great utility for alchemy and combat in the mortal realm, while immortal fire is found only in the Great Thousand World. This fire possesses a terrifying temperature capable of incinerating all things. The flood dragon was merely a demonic beast, still far from being an immortal one. Consequently, it couldn't withstand the immortal flames and was burned to death upon impact. Such was the overwhelming power of this fire. Chinzi stood frozen in place, her mind blank as she replayed the battle. That immortal fire was far more powerful than she had imagined. The dragon had no strength to resist before being incinerated. Most terrifying of all was that a child of this age could control such a force. He could easily wipe out a powerful beast like that dragon, a fact that left the former empress feeling quite envious. To be honest, who wouldn't be? The dragon's scales might have endured the fire long enough to escape, but Li Heng had targeted its most vulnerable spot from the start. By burning it from the inside out, he cut off any hope of escape. Though she hated to admit it, the 9-yang immortal fire was truly frightening. This boy's luck was simply heaven-defying. We see now that he had even managed to obtain the 9-demon piercing garment. No one throughout the ages had ever claimed that treasure, yet he held it. He was, for all intents and purposes, a child of destiny. Without that garment, he couldn't have mastered immortal fire so early. Then, she remembered the yang spirit jade fetus. If he hadn't stolen and eaten her jade fetus, how could his divine body have reached completion? As Chinzi pondered this, something felt slightly off. The eternal immortal demon body, by all rights, shouldn't have reached its peak just by consuming a single jade fetus. She wondered if he had absorbed other heavenly treasures, as the stronger the divine body, the more resources it requires to reach completion. While his primordial fetus was complete, the immortal demon body should have been far behind. She began to wonder if a certain dream had been real. One night, she dreamed she drank immortal fetus jade dew. She thought it was a dream, yet her body had grown significantly stronger afterward. She suspected the boy might have fed her that dew to complete his divine body. Perhaps it was a companion treasure, a rare gift from birth. Some are born with heavenly treasures by their side. This boy truly was a favorite of fortune to possess such a thing. It was simply unnatural. Realizing he might have actually shared that precious jade dew with her, the resentment in Chinzi's heart began to fade away. Li Heng chuckled, thinking how useful the 9-yang immortal fire was as he beckoned with his small hand to pull the flames back into his body. He held a special space within his dantian to house the fire without harm. With that settled, he walked toward the Crimson Sun racier. As he drew within 10 feet of the golden radiance, the light was instantly absorbed into his body. His 1000-path mode leveled up, increasing both his multiplier and daily uses, much to his delight. He hadn't expected this. Increasing that multiplier was surprisingly easy, and one shouldn't underestimate a single fold. The better the location, the more that multiplier matters. For instance, at the 18th level of Hell, a single Chaos Demon pill would suddenly become 2. A small change, really. The value was immeasurable, especially since his eternal immortal demon body required a terrifying amount of resources to advance. Though he had gathered much, resources eventually run dry. Increasing his multiplier was the best way to ensure he never ran out. It would allow his cultivation to soar even faster. Furthermore, increasing his daily uses was an equally powerful boon. Previously, he was limited to 1 use per day. If he found a prime location after using his turn, he was stuck. He would have to wait until the next day, which, in a place like this eternal divine realm, was a waste. The realm was thick with Tao energy and prime spots, yet he could only stay in each pool for 3 days. At most, he could have claimed 4 rewards, leaving many behind. But with his uses increased, the math changed entirely. Now, with 2 uses a day, he could claim 8 rewards in that same window. We see him approach the Erasure next. It was the perfect spot to test his new effects. He drew close and silently activated the 1000 Path technique. A chime rang out. By practicing near the Crimson Sun Erasure, he was granted a 10,000-year Crimson Sun Erasure reward. Thanks to his doubled multiplier, he received an additional one as well. The erasure growing on the ground, however, was different. It was only 1,000 years old. In the 3 realms, such a treasure is incredibly rare, as most are picked early. Usually, they are snatched up within decades. In the divine realm, 1,000-year treasures are common, but 10,000-year ones? Not so much. Few humans ever set foot here, but the local demonic beasts are always fighting over these precious treasures. Naturally, most plants are devoured the moment they mature. Yet here he was, somehow obtaining a 10,000-year-old specimen through his technique. It was a pleasant surprise, to say the least. And to get an extra one on top of that, simply incredible. That meant he now held 2 10,000-year Crimson Sun Erasure. It was an incredible haul, as treasures of that grade are exceptionally rare. Even in the depths of the 1000 Path Hell, they are seldom seen, usually appearing only below the 12th level as based treasures. Spiritual treasures like these are even rarer. To advance his eternal immortal demon body, he needed to cultivate both paths simultaneously. This required both resources and spiritual ones, making the Crimson Sun Erasure incredibly precious, especially at the 10,000-year mark. While it only has 9,000 more years than the common version, its value is over 100 times greater. Every millennium adds 10-fold value. In fact, these 2 10,000-year specimens were worth 200 times more than the 1,000-year-old one sitting right there. The erasure on the ground was worth far less, but he wasn't about to let it go to waste. He pulled out a small shovel. He carefully dug up the roots and tucked it into his spatial realm. Li Qinxi stood nearby, watching her brother claim the treasure. She didn't make a move to stop him. After all, he was the one who killed the silver shark. The prize was rightfully his. Still, she told herself these items shouldn't be used recklessly. She would have to teach him how to handle them safely later. After finishing his harvest, he climbed onto a protruding boulder to survey the horizon. The surrounding terrain was relatively low. From this vantage point, he could see distant landmarks. He noticed the aura of eternal artifacts on a small hill and within a nearby forest. Over there, near a massive 100-foot tree, the eternal energy was surprisingly dense. It confirmed his earlier suspicions. Eternal energy usually gathers where heavenly treasures are hidden. The stronger the aura, the better the treasure waiting to be found. Something specific caught his eye, what appeared to be the Eternal Divine Temple, a place rumored to hold immense opportunities. Inside, one could find the lingering traces of ancient gods. He had once read about this in an old, weathered text. The secret to becoming an eternal great emperor was hidden within that temple. In his first life, the life where he reached the emperor stage, he had tried to break through to the eternal rank, only to realize his natural talent was simply insufficient for the task. It was an impossible wall for him and every other great emperor in the desolate ancient realm. They were all trapped at the peak. None could take that final step. The eternal great emperor is a completely different level of existence, achievable only through a true breakthrough. Only then could one truly become the ruler of the 3 realms. In that past life, he had obtained the primordial heaven-earth pagoda, allowing him to store his memories within it. By using the various methods of the underworld to retain his memories through reincarnation, a truly mad idea was born, the cycle of 100 lives. To achieve the rank of Eternal Great Emperor, he spent 100,000 years preparing. Now, Li Qinxi had endured countless hardships to finally reach the Eternal Fortress. She had secured the Red Divine Pool specifically to enter the Eternal Divine Temple. "Brother, there's a palace over there," she said. "Let's go take a look." However, before heading to the temple, he wanted to absorb the eternal energy from other locations first to avoid having to double back later. He pointed toward the left, indicating his desire to visit the nearby woods first. We see that this forest also contains a significant amount of eternal energy. The aura there was even richer than what he had just absorbed, clearly hiding some great treasure. The palace, meanwhile, was still quite a distance away. She didn't want to waste time in the woods. Now that Li Qinxi had spotted the Eternal Divine Temple, her mind was entirely focused on getting there. She had lost interest in further exploration, but he remained firm in his decision. He was determined to visit that forest first. The woods were the closest to their current position. To go to the palace and then return later, well, it made him miss the days of food delivery apps. Li Chenxi glanced toward the palace and then at the boy's back, sighing at his stubbornness. It seemed the temple would have to wait a little longer. Although they were restricted to a 10-mile radius, this was an unfamiliar land. If they separated now, finding each other again would be nearly impossible. And so, he decided to visit the forest first before heading to the temple. She eventually agreed, realizing they had to stay together. He began to lead the way toward the dense trees. As they approached the edge of the forest, the air grew heavy with ancient power. They moved cautiously through the undergrowth. Every step took them deeper into a place where time seemed to have stood still for millennia. The energy was palpable now, vibrating through the very ground beneath their feet. But as he stepped forward, a sudden sense of dread filled the air. It's dangerous. Don't go any closer. Li Chenxi reached out to stop him. The ancient tree of life had already developed a consciousness and would attack any human. If they stepped within 30 feet of it, they would be seen as enemies. The ancient tree would swallow them both, leaving absolutely nothing behind. He looked up toward the massive trunk. There, in the center of the bark, was a weathered, ancient face. High up in the canopy, something else drifted. A thick cloud of eternal energy floated there, far more concentrated than the crimson sun erasure from before. It was a staggering amount of power. If he could absorb it, his cultivation speed would likely double. Not only that, he could also find a check-in point right beneath the trunk. To say he wasn't tempted would be a lie. Each divine pool obtained from the god rankings corresponds to a specific area within the eternal divine realm. This meant the area for the divine body ranking could only be entered once. If he missed this check-in location now, it would be lost forever. The problem, of course, was how to get close. To absorb the eternal energy, he needed to be within 10 feet of the ancient tree. The same rule applied to the check-in point. However, stepping within a 30-foot radius of the tree of life was a different matter entirely. The tree would immediately label them as enemies and attack. Without a foolproof plan, the risk was simply too high. This tree of life had been growing for roughly 2,500 years. Its power was far more terrifying than that of the silver reef they had faced. It possessed the strength of an immortal beast. While his 9-yang immortal fire was powerful and held an advantage over wood attribute monsters, he was currently too weak to draw out the flame's full potential. If he mastered a fire attribute technique to complement it, he could certainly incinerate this tree. Hunting the silver reef earlier had been easy, but that was because it was merely a demon beast. It hadn't reached the level of an immortal beast yet. Li Chenxi, sensing the danger, urged that they leave this place immediately. She was certain this tree of life was far beyond their current ability to handle. He didn't quite agree, but he told her to wait, claiming he was hungry and needed to rest. He found a clearing 60 feet away from the tree. Without waiting for his sister's approval, he sat down and pulled out a large piece of venison. Naturally, resting wasn't his true intention. He had already devised a plan that might just work against the tree. She, however, was exasperated that he was thinking of food at a time like this. Li Chenxi grabbed his arm, trying to pull him away, but she found that he was as unmovable as a stubborn ox. As he began to chew on the meat, he sent a portion of his consciousness into the system space, summoning the 9-yang immortal fire there. Immortal fires are ranked from 1 to 9, with a supreme grade above that. The higher the grade, the more rare and terrifying the power. While the 9-yang immortal fire was rarer than the heavenly yang fire, its current raw power was only equivalent to a first-grade flame. And at that level, facing the tree of life would be quite a difficult task indeed. If he could elevate the 9-yang immortal fire to the 2nd or even 3rd grade, he would finally have the power to deal with that ancient tree. When the underworld was relocated, he had obtained many treasures, including a rare artifact capable of enhancing the grade of immortal flames. We see his consciousness appear within a scorching region where a volcano looms, spewing thick, rolling smoke from its crater. The magma inside burned with a terrifying heat, as if it could melt heaven and earth themselves. If Li Chenxi were to see this, she would be shocked to discover that this magma was no ordinary substance, but a celestial treasure known as crimson immortal magma. It was the perfect fuel to nurture immortal flames. He commanded the 9-yang immortal fire to descend and begin its absorption. The 9-yang immortal fire hovered over the crater, sensing the crimson immortal magma below and radiating a sense of pure excitement. Upon hearing its master's permission, the flame flared violently and transformed into a streak of light, diving straight into the depths. It began to greedily devour the surrounding magma, and we can see the raw power of the 9-yang immortal fire starting to surge. Back in the physical world, he sat calmly on a moss-covered rock, looking for all the world like a boy without a care. He held a large venison leg, eating until his face was slick with oil. He had the family cook prepare this specifically for the journey. It was convenient for a quick meal, but Li Chenxi, standing nearby, was so anxious that cold sweat began to bead on her forehead. She scolded him for being a glutton, reminding him their time was limited, but he simply offered her a bite, telling her not to worry. He was simply waiting for the flame to level up before facing the tree of life, though Li Chenxi was in no mood for snacks. And so, he sat on that mossy stone, gnawing on venison for nearly an hour. Of course, this wasn't just about his appetite. It was a calculated delay to empower his flame. Within the system space, the nine-yang immortal fire was growing stronger by the second. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed through the woods from the direction of the Tree of Life. Thick, arm-sized vines began to stir. The vines lashed out, flying toward the two of them like reaching claws. Seeing this, Li Chenxi's face turned deathly pale. Her heart leaped into her throat as she realized the tree was attacking. She screamed for them to run, fearing the worst. Normally, staying outside the 30-foot radius wouldn't trigger its hostility, but these two had simply stayed in its presence for far too long. As the ancient tree bristled with hostility and prepared to attack, he narrowed his eyes slightly and thrust his palm toward the looming trunk. A streak of golden flame shot from his palm, causing the vines to recoil wherever it passed, and Li Chenxi reacted with impressive speed. She turned to flee, but after running several yards, she looked back and realized he had no intention of moving. She screamed for him to run. Ignoring the danger to herself, she rushed back and placed her small frame in front of him, intending to use her own body as a shield. She was determined to withstand those flying vines just to buy her brother a little more time. To be honest, her courage was quite remarkable. In this moment of crisis, she truly acted like an elder sister, desperate to protect him as she grabbed his wrist to pull him away. She urged him to escape, certain his immortal fire was no match for the tree and could only delay it at best, which, sadly, was true. She hoped they could use that opening to flee, having already calculated that the fire alone couldn't win a direct confrontation with the tree. While the flame might stall the ancient tree, it couldn't deal a fatal blow, and those relentless vines would eventually swallow them both whole. She believed staying there meant certain death, but then, the nine-yang immortal fire tore through the vines with a sudden, violent roar. It slammed into the trunk, its searing heat instantly charring a massive section of bark and forcing the ancient tree to writhe in agony. A raspy, distorted voice echoed as the tree's face opened its mouth to speak, cursing the humans and vowing never to let them leave alive. Thousands of vines shot out from the trunk simultaneously, swarming toward the nine-yang immortal fire to surround it entirely. They wove themselves into a massive, suffocating net, with more and more vines layering on to form a giant, wooden sphere. The power of the immortal fire was trapped deep within the center of the vines, unable to break free for the time being. With the fire contained, over 1,000 vines turned their attention toward the fleeing pair as the tree sought to eliminate the humans first. The tree knew that once the master was dead, the fire would be easy to handle. Li Chenxi felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Her clothes were drenched in sweat as she realized the tree possessed a high intelligence, easily rivaling that of any human strategist. It had already devised a plan to deal with them, and she knew if those vines caught up, they would surely die right there in the dirt. She wondered if they had to leave the divine realm now, though she was unwilling. One could always exit by triggering the divine pool again. It would release a surge of power to send them both away, providing a desperate escape route if the situation became truly life-threatening. But leaving now meant losing any future chance to enter this place, and she hadn't even begun to explore the temple yet. She was loath to leave without investigating the secrets of the Eternal Land. Yet she urged Li Chun to take out the divine pool so they could flee. No matter how unwilling she was, dying here wasn't an option. Only by staying alive would they have a chance to turn the tables. Then, suddenly, a massive heat wave surged from behind them. The giant sphere formed by tens of thousands of vines began to buckle under a terrifying fiery power. With a deafening roar, it exploded into countless fragments, the searing light turning the entire forest into a sea of gold as Li Chenxi turned around. Her eyes nearly bulged out of her head as she stared at the immortal flame. The nine-yang immortal fire had actually evolved. Previously, the flame was only the size of a fist, but after this sudden advancement, it had grown to over a foot long with a truly terrifying aura. Even from a great distance, we can practically feel that oppressive heat wave as the nine-yang immortal fire transformed into a streak of pure light. It streaked directly toward the ancient tree, whose weathered, wooden face was now twisted with a very human sense of dread. Tens of thousands of vines lashed out at the immortal fire, but before they could even get close, they were ignited into a fierce, unstoppable blaze. The fire raced along the vines toward the main trunk, and the moment it struck the bark, the intense heat caused the entire tree to spontaneously combust. As the scorching flames engulfed the massive, ancient tree, Li Chenxi finally stopped running, realizing the danger had passed. She stared fixedly at the immortal fire, her eyes shimmering with envy. To be honest, his luck was bordering on the absurd. The nine-yang immortal fire had been a mere first-grade flame, but this evolution had pushed it straight to the third grade. A third-grade immortal fire is a rare sight even in the desolate heaven realm, making a 2,000-year-old tree look like mere kindling by comparison. She glanced at the young man beside her, feeling a sharp pang of jealousy. How could one person be so consistently fortunate? For the flame to evolve autonomously in such a moment of crisis made her wonder if he truly was the chosen child of destiny. There are usually two ways for such a flame to evolve. The first is by consuming enough fire-attributed treasures to reach a breaking point. The second is to break through its limits during a moment of extreme peril, a method that is, quite naturally, incredibly rare. Out of 10,000 immortal fires, one might never see such a thing. This boy has only possessed the flame for less than 3 years. Yet it has already evolved once on its own. His luck is truly heaven-defying. Based on her guesses, he didn't even have the treasures needed to nurture it. The flame must have sensed danger and evolved purely to protect its master. To be honest, it's enough to make anyone green with envy. Treasures capable of nurturing an immortal fire are incredibly rare. Even in her 10,000 years of preparation, she had encountered very few. We see Li Chun nod with satisfaction as the flame advances. Earlier, the Crimson Yang immortal fire had already consumed the Crimson immortal magma. It had reached the brink of a breakthrough. When the ancient tree attacked, he had no choice but to summon the flame mid-battle. Pushed to the limit by external pressure, it finally broke through. This evolution was, of course, inseparable from the effects of the Crimson immortal magma. It truly lived up to its reputation. Even during the underworld migration, they hadn't obtained much of this treasure, but now it had served its purpose. The immortal fire burned with such intensity that the ancient tree blazed fiercely for nearly 4 hours before the flames finally began to die down. Fortunately, there were no other trees within 100 feet, so the blaze didn't trigger a forest fire. Then, with a heavy crash, the ancient tree collapsed, leaving behind a pool of thick, emerald green liquid. Li Chun walked over and produced a jade bottle. He carefully collected the liquid, which turned out to be about 20 drops of life essence. This was a prize indeed. Life essence contains a dense concentration of life force. For any cultivator below the immortal stage, no matter how severe the injury, a single drop can restore them completely. For those nearing the end of their natural lifespan, 1 drop can grant an extra century of life. 100 years might not seem long to some, but it is more than enough time for a desperate cultivator to accomplish a great deal. With that extra century, they might just break through to a new realm and gain even more longevity. Thus, life essence is a treasure that everyone in the cultivation world would fight to claim. As the trunk fell, the eternal chi from the canopy began to drift downward. It showed signs of dissipating. Once a plant dies, this precious eternal chi will vanish entirely within a matter of days. If he didn't act now, he wouldn't be able to absorb it. He could either sign in at the dead tree or absorb the eternal chi first. He chose to absorb the eternal chi to boost his sign-in multiplier, ensuring a better reward later. And so he stood his ground. With every breath, golden light descended from the heavens and merged into his body. He was successfully absorbing the eternal chi. His sign-in reward multiplier increased by 2, and his daily sign-in attempts also increased twice, combined with the existing bonuses. The total sign-in multiplier had now reached 3 times the base value. Had he signed in earlier at the Crimson Yang immortal plant, he would have received 4 of those 10,000-year-old stocks. Each one of them, to be honest, is worth an absolute fortune. Even in the desolate ancient realm, such treasures are highly coveted. And now, his rewards had been boosted by another 2-fold. The eternal chi gathered by this ancient life tree was truly abundant. Li Chun suspected that the amount of chi present likely depended on how long the plant had existed. The older the life form, the more it absorbed. And then, he signed in. By signing in at the ancient life tree, he earned a bottle of life leaves. With the triple multiplier now active, he received 3 additional bottles. Adding those to the original one, he now possessed 4 bottles of this rare essence. He felt a surge of joy as the rewards were automatically stored within the system space. He turned his consciousness inward, opening a jade bottle and tilting it toward the sunlight to peer inside. A perfectly reasonable way to check one's loot. Each bottle contained about 100 drops of life leaf essence. With 400 drops in total, he was set for a long time. Life leaves are legendary for healing wounds and increasing one's affinity with beasts, making them highly sought after in the 3 realms. Collecting as many as possible was certainly a wise move. From the essence gathered on the ground, he set aside 3 drops. He decided to give these 3 to his companion. Since he had gained so much from the sign-in, he didn't mind sharing a little. These drops could heal almost any injury instantly if consumed. In the dangerous world of cultivation, they are literal lifesavers. He didn't want to see Li Chun get hurt. Though they bickered constantly, they were family, and deep down, he cared for her. She thanked him, casting a grateful glance his way. It was quite touching that Li Heng would think of her at a time like this. Life leaves are indeed precious. They can save a life in a crisis. Keeping a few drops is like having a powerful trump card. The lingering tension from their earlier disagreement finally began to fade. And now, it was time for them to head toward the temple. Wait for me, Li Heng said, pointing toward a distant hill. He had decided that was their next destination, because in his eyes, that hill was radiating a dense aura of eternal chi, easily rivaling the ancient tree. To him, it was a mandatory stop, but what could possibly be there? Li Chun was skeptical. She didn't quite believe he could find a treasure just by pointing randomly. Regardless, he was determined to go. He turned and began walking toward the hill, not particularly caring if his sister followed or not. Left speechless, she had no choice but to follow. And so, we see the 2 of them continuing their journey together, following the young boy's lead. As they reached a barrier, a ripple spread out from where his finger touched it. This particular shield possessed a very strong resistance. It blocked his hand entirely, making it impossible to pass through normally. Fortunately, Li Chenxi was quite familiar with how these barriers worked. She took out the red divine token, explaining they needed it to proceed. A white token only allows exploration of the outermost areas. A silver token grants access to the second zone where opportunities are richer, while a gold token opens the way to the third. The purple token reaches the fourth zone and the temple itself. But the red token, besides granting total access to every single region, it also unlocks a special hidden treasury within the temple. According to her research, the ultimate secrets of the Eternal Land are hidden there. The girl pressed her divine token against the barrier. It was a rather elegant solution to a solid wall, really. The barrier automatically split open, creating a gap wide enough for them to pass through. Li Hang then produced his own rainbow token. He walked through the opening with ease. To explore more areas, one must achieve a higher ranking on the divine leaderboard. A higher rank allows for more eternal chi absorption. Some leaderboards even grant immediate rewards upon being listed, rather than simply granting entry to the divine realm. The benefit of such a system is that a reward is guaranteed. There is no need to rely on luck once you are on the list. Not long after, the two of them successfully climbed the small hill. Strangely, there were no beast guardians here. At the summit, they found a water altar shimmering with a brilliant azure light. Li Chenxi's jaw dropped in disbelief. It was the Spirit Knight Heavenly Pool. Their luck, it seemed, was becoming somewhat absurd. She couldn't help but stare at the boy beside her. She wondered what special ability he possessed to sense such a treasure from so far away. The small hill didn't seem to emit any special aura at first. Only by getting closer could one discover its unique nature. The eternal divine realm is governed by special laws, ensuring that even the most precious treasures don't leak their energy prematurely. The Spirit Knight Heavenly Pool is a basin that gathers the essence of heaven and earth, where even a single drop of liquid is worth an entire month of bitter cultivation. However, there is a catch. The liquid can only be used for training right here. It cannot be taken away. The moment it leaves the pool, it transforms into nothing more than ordinary, useless water. Golden gases floated above the surface, and as Li Hang approached, they began to merge automatically into his body. By standing in the pool, he could directly absorb its spiritual essence, allowing his system space to process the liquid. This energy acted directly upon his physical form. The pool before them was only about 10 feet wide, much smaller than others. But his system's multiplier ensured that the gains he received from this single location were significantly amplified. Places like this can only be harvested once before their luck vanishes. The higher the multiplier, the greater the reward, naturally. He felt that entering the eternal divine realm was already worth it. He told his sister to wait on the temple and stay here to absorb the essence. He glanced at the sky as the sun began to set and the world grew dim. It was rare to find such a cultivation treasure. They would stay the night and resume their exploration tomorrow. The pool was small, but it held enough for both of them to absorb for a long time. Li Chenxi hesitated, noting that since he found it, it should be his. She felt it wasn't quite right for her to take it. He reassured her that they wouldn't have found it without each other, and since the liquid couldn't be carried away anyway, they might as well absorb it all now. He spoke with surprising generosity, which made Li Chenxi pause in mild shock. Her impression of him began to shift. Perhaps the boy wasn't as obnoxious as she thought. Maybe she had simply misunderstood him. With a soft huff, she sat by the edge and dipped her hand into the pool. The moment her skin touched the liquid, a dense spiritual energy surged through her pores. Startled, she quickly withdrew her hand and sat cross-legged to begin her meditation. As she began to process the energy, her body suddenly shuddered, releasing a powerful and commanding aura into the evening air. Watching from the side, Li Hang was momentarily stunned. It seemed his little sister had already reached the peak of the chi condensation stage. He had expected Li Chenxi to reach the second or third level in 3 days, but here she was, already at the very top. She was progressing much faster than anticipated, focusing now on refining her chi. Most would choose to break through to the next realm immediately. However, doing so means missing out on a vital foundation. Only by repeatedly refining one's internal energy can a truly solid base be built. In ancient times, the greatest masters of heaven and earth reached such heights precisely because they understood this fundamental secret. They knew how to cultivate properly, prioritizing a firm foundation. Back then, the practice of refining chi multiple times was the standard. Over time, these techniques were simplified by the world, and the most crucial parts were discarded, leaving only the basic 9 levels of chi. Yet, within the eternal divine rankings, there exists a specific list dedicated solely to the art of chi refinement. It is known as the Eternal Divine Tool Ranking. To even crack the top 100, one must refine their chi at least 15 times. That is the absolute limit for 1 in a trillion. Seeing his sister working so hard, Li Hang decided he couldn't just stand around. While his sister was deep in her meditation, he took a literal plunge, diving straight into the pool to absorb the liquid essence. Direct immersion offers the best results, though few would dare try it. Most bodies simply cannot handle that much raw power. The sheer pressure of the chi would cause an ordinary person to explode. The pool was deeper than it looked, reaching about 10 feet down. Li Heng rolled up his sleeves and began scrubbing his body with the liquid. After being scorched by the ancient tree's flames, he felt quite sticky. He figured he might as well use this priceless essence to wash off the sweat. To be honest, it felt incredibly refreshing. Bathing in spiritual liquid is perhaps the ultimate luxury. Once clean, he sank to the bottom of the pool and sat cross-legged to meditate. Thanks to his eternal immortal demon physique, he could breathe perfectly fine underwater, so there was no need for concern. Soaking his entire body increased his absorption speed 100-fold. In just a short amount of time, he felt a familiar surge. His internal energy reached the breaking point once again, and he ascended to the 7th level of Qi. Meanwhile, back at the surface, Li Chenxi remained lost in her cultivation. The spiritual liquid she had gathered was being absorbed into her body at an incredible rate. She marveled at how the spiritual liquid was far easier to absorb than any pill, deciding to seize every moment to take in as much as possible. Deep down, she was determined not to fall behind that boy, finding herself wanting to compete with Li Heng in everything they did. Since the liquid from this heavenly pool couldn't be carried away, they only had one night to stay here and absorb what they could. In her mind, whoever absorbed the most would be the winner, and she was certain her secret immortal technique would give her the edge. This particular technique was one she had specifically sought out in the desolate Heaven Valley, as it could be activated without needing immortal Qi. It was the primordial 100 refining palace, a technique that could only be performed by someone possessing the primordial earth fetus physique. Without that specific constitution, the technique would be useless, but she had relied on it during her first 3 days in the eternal divine domain. It was thanks to this power that she had reached the peak of the Qi realm so quickly, and now, the pool offered the perfect chance to refine it. Refining Qi is a delicate process, requiring one to take the existing energy within the body and compress it further. By removing impurities and forging a new, purer energy, the total volume of Qi actually decreases during the tempering process. To continue, one must constantly replenish the supply, and Li Chenxi was determined to claim the top spot on the Eternal Divine Tool ranking. With 100,000 years of preparation behind her, she felt ready to surpass everyone. But then, she noticed Li Heng was gone. She looked around and saw no sign of him. Since there had been no commotion, she assumed he had simply stepped away to find a restroom. Given how much that boy ate, it seemed like a reasonable conclusion. Shrugging it off, Li Chenxi cupped some liquid in her hands. She drank it all down in one go, immediately closing her eyes to focus her mind and activate the primordial 100 refining technique. As the liquid entered her body, it diffused rapidly, surging through her meridians like a powerful tide. Just 2 days prior, she had finally pushed her primordial earth fetus to the mastery stage, increasing her absorption speed 1,000-fold. This was the very reason she had waited 3 days to enter the domain. As the technique circulated, it began to gather the wild energy. She pulled the stray Qi together, absorbing every drop of the spiritual liquid until her internal reserves were completely purified. Having successfully completed her first round of refinement, Li Chenxi opened her eyes and reached for another handful of the precious liquid. She found that drinking the liquid directly was far faster than simple skin contact, so she closed her eyes to begin the process once more. Nearly an hour passed as she completed her 4th round of absorption, just as a massive full moon began its ascent into the night sky. The brilliant moonlight bathed the land, leaving the divine domain glowing. Yet Li Chenxi couldn't help but wonder why the boy hadn't returned. The poolside remained empty with no sign of Li Heng, and though she told herself he'd be back soon, a seed of worry began to grow. Li Chenxi cupped more of the spiritual liquid and swallowed it, closing her eyes to enter a meditative state once again. But this time, her mind was flooded with images of Li Heng being hunted by demonic beasts, crying out for his sister to save him. Her eyes snapped open, filled with genuine concern. She realized she couldn't just sit there if he was truly in danger. After all their time together, she had come to see him as family, and she decided it was time to go look for him. He was her brother, sharing the same bloodline, so she turned to head down the mountain, until a sudden sound stopped her cold. A loud boom echoed from the pool behind her, and as she turned, the spiritual liquid erupted like a fountain. A small boy's voice drifted up from the depths, though if not for his divine physique, she might have mistaken him for a floating corpse. It turned out the boy had been soaking in the pool the entire time, the very same pool she had been drinking from. The realization that she had been drinking his bathwater was enough to make her stomach turn, and she collapsed to the ground in disgust. She tried to retch, but the liquid was already absorbed, leaving her to shout that she never wanted to see his face again. Li Heng, meanwhile, explained that by soaking his entire body at the bottom of the pool, his absorption efficiency had been incredible. He had successfully reached the peak of the Qi condensation realm, and now it was time to begin the final tempering of his energy. His final rank on the Divine Tool ranking would depend on this refinement, but then he noticed his sister looking quite pale. He placed a hand on her shoulder with genuine concern, asking if her stomach was upset, which, naturally, was the worst thing he could say. Li Chenxi was beyond furious, certain that her nausea was entirely due to consuming the water he had been marinating in. Since he seemed to be making things worse with every word, Li Heng decided it was best to just leave her be for a moment. He decided not to worry about her for now, as the most important thing at this stage was to seize every moment to absorb the spiritual liquid. And so, we see him dive back into the celestial pool, leaving Li Chenxi frozen like a statue, her small hand still raised in a futile attempt to stop him. She wanted to ask why he was jumping back in, but he simply claimed it was faster this way, showing no fear of the dirt as he sank beneath the surface. Li Chenxi remained there, completely petrified, staring at the spot where he vanished while her hand hung uselessly in the air. Since he insisted that soaking was more efficient, he disappeared once more, leaving Li Chenxi to watch with her brow furrowed in deep conflict. After much hesitation, she finally cupped another handful of the liquid. However, this time, she chose to absorb it through her palms rather than drinking it. There was simply no other way, as she couldn't bring herself to swallow water he had been soaking in for so long, even if palm absorption was much slower. It was a compromise she could accept. While inside the pool, Li Heng felt his 6,000 pores release a terrifying suction force. The volume of his energy didn't increase, but its purity reached a new level, ensuring that any technique he used would be far more refined. A more powerful strike requires this kind of condensation, which is a simple enough concept, though it demands a massive amount of time and spiritual energy. Once a certain level of density is reached, progress often stops, as every person's cultivation talent dictates their own unique upper limit. An entire night passed, and the spiritual liquid in the pool began to dwindle until the bottom was nearly visible, marking the end of his refinement rounds. He had reached 10 successful condensations, leaving him only 5 steps away from the divine tool ranking, though these last 5 would be the hardest. The difficulty of these final stages was truly daunting, requiring several times more spiritual energy than all the previous rounds combined. Li Chenxi had also spent the entire night absorbing the liquid, yet her total intake was barely a tenth of what the boy had managed. The vast majority of the pool had been claimed by him alone, and as the sun began to rise, a faint morning mist drifted across the horizon. Li Chenxi opened her eyes and looked at him with genuine shock, realizing that his speed of absorption was nothing short of monstrous. Even though she used immortal arts, her refusal to enter the pool directly meant her progress was significantly lagging behind his. To be honest, her primordial earth physique simply couldn't withstand such a massive influx of liquid without risking permanent damage to her meridians. This was where the sheer power of the eternal immortal demon body truly shone, and with the dawn breaking, the two of them finally ceased their cultivation. As they continued toward the divine temple, Li Heng discovered 3 more locations rich with eternal qi and absorbed every drop of it. His cultivation multiplier surged by another 5 times, reaching a total of 11, while he collected several generous rewards along the way. We see them arrive at an open clearing where a magnificent hall stands, its walls intricately carved with the portraits of ancient gods. He stared at one of the divine figures, and in an instant, his consciousness was pulled into a strange, ethereal world. Before him stood a terrifying deity whose physical form seemed to shake the very foundations of heaven and earth with every movement. The sheer power of its bloodline was overwhelming, possessing a divine body that made even his own eternal immortal demon body feel inferior. In the ancient era where these gods lived, it was said that reaching the immortal realm was a simple task for almost anyone. Their physical constitutions were far more terrifying than anything seen today. Back then, even a top-tier physique wouldn't have stood out. Perhaps the reason no gods have appeared since that era is simply because modern cultivators can no longer meet those impossible physical requirements. He had seen drawings of gods in old books before, of course, but those sketches lacked the true spiritual essence of the real thing. They failed to capture that divine majesty, and it took a long moment before the two of them finally snapped back to reality. Li Chenxi took the lead, pulling out her divine token and giving the heavy doors a gentle push until they creaked wide open. An ancient, heavy aura spilled out from the hall as Li Heng drew his own token and followed her into the shadows of the temple. The moment they stepped inside, the concentrated eternal qi swirling in the air began to rush toward them, flooding into their bodies. He stood at the entrance for a long time, absorbing the massive influx until a notification confirmed his multiplier had increased by 10. Even he hadn't expected the eternal divine temple to house such a staggering amount of energy. It was truly a rare find. It appeared the temple acted as a natural sponge for eternal qi, though it seemed unable to preserve that energy forever. Once the concentration reached a certain point, it would likely dissipate. Otherwise, after millions of years, the density would be far higher. If the energy had truly accumulated for eons, his multiplier would have jumped by thousands rather than just 10 times. He realized then that the temple was like a leaky vessel. It could gather the energy of the world, but it could never hold it permanently. It seemed the temple had reached its absolute capacity, a limit that could not be exceeded. By absorbing all the eternal qi now, he would empty the vessel, leaving it to slowly refill over the next several thousand years. The energy would eventually return, but he wouldn't be there to claim it. Still, a tenfold increase was a pleasant surprise. With his total multiplier now at 21, the rewards from his 1,000-path trials were becoming truly substantial. The eternal divine body required a staggering amount of spiritual and demonic energy to advance, making these multipliers essential. Only by securing more rewards could he hope to speed up his future cultivation. Otherwise, the path ahead would be impossibly slow. If he relied solely on absorbing the world's natural spiritual energy, reaching the next realm would take until the end of time. Inside the temple, we see a long corridor lined with towering statues, each one representing a different ancient deity. As he walked, Li Hing looked around, finally understanding what it truly meant to be a god in this world. Even as mere stone carvings, they possessed an immovable presence, guarding the legendary opportunities hidden within these walls. If a god chose a successor, they would grant a divine inheritance, a gift so potent that even a fragment could change a life forever. However, these deities were notoriously picky, and very few humans ever managed to catch their divine attention. Suddenly, a massive stone statue beside them erupted in brilliant light, completely enveloping the young girl in its glow. Li Heng couldn't hide his surprise. It seemed Li Chenxi's luck was even better than he had imagined to trigger such an event. The opportunities within the Eternal Divine Temple varied, and in this specific hall, the rewards were tied to one's divine physique. Behind Li Chenxi, the phantom of her primordial earth fetus appeared, and the statue reached out to gently touch the spectral image. The fetus, which originally looked like a small infant, exploded with light as the deity's hand brushed against it. It transformed into a majestic, immortal sovereign, radiating a terrifying pressure that commanded respect from all who saw it. Li Heng's pupils contracted and his heart raced as he recognized the transformation, the primordial earth divine body. This was the evolved form of her original physique, possessing a cultivation talent at least 1,000 times stronger than before. The talent of the primordial earth divine body was now nearly equal to his own eternal immortal demon body. He truly hadn't expected his little sister to find such a thing here. Watching her encounter such a heaven-defying opportunity, Li Heng felt a flicker of envy. Previously, his physique could have easily crushed hers in every way. Whether it was cultivation speed or physical constitution, he had far surpassed her, but now, his body was only a single step ahead of her new form. It seems the Eternal Divine Temple is indeed a wondrous place, and we can finally see why people are willing to risk everything just to step inside. A single stroke of luck here can change one's destiny, yet only those ranked in the top 10 of the Eternal God list are granted the right to enter. As the divine opportunity concluded, the statue returned to its original, silent state, looking as though nothing had happened at all. Li Chenxi felt the transformation within her and was overcome with joy. The primordial earth divine body was a surprise she never dared to hope for. After all, once you enter the temple, there is no guarantee of receiving a blessing, so she turned toward Li Heng with a playful glint in her eyes. With a hint of pride, she told herself that her physique was now nearly equal to his, and she was destined to surpass him one day. She imagined him finally having to call her big sister as they continued their journey deeper into the long, silent corridor. As they walked, Li Heng kept glancing left and right, secretly hoping that one of the statues would react and grant him a similar miracle. But it seemed his luck had run dry for the moment. They reached the very end of the hall without a single statue showing any sign of life. Li Chenxi shook her head slightly, noting that since they had reached the end, it was unlikely any further opportunities would appear for him. It was a bit of a shame, really, as the corridor opened up into a vast, spacious hall dominated by a single, massive statue in the center. This figure was significantly larger than any they had seen before, radiating an aura of majesty that demanded absolute reverence from anyone nearby. Behind the statue stood two tightly sealed gates. The one on the left was slightly smaller, adorned with a shimmering golden plaque. The plaque bore the words, Eternal Library, while the gate on the right was noticeably taller and more imposing than its counterpart. Li Heng recalled information from an ancient text mentioning a divine book hidden within this library that held the secrets to becoming an eternal great emperor. By finding this book, one could follow its records to lay a perfect foundation, step by step, toward that ultimate peak of power. However, entering the Eternal Library was no simple task. It required the possession of a red divine pool, a requirement few could ever meet. Only then can that great door be opened. As for the other gate, it leads to a treasure pavilion, a private sanctuary belonging to the gods themselves. Only a god may enter there, and in tens of thousands of years, not a single soul has ever stepped through. By now, our duo has reached the main hall. It seemed there were no more miracles left for Li Heng. Although Li Chenxi wanted to surpass him, seeing him miss out on an opportunity made her feel a bit sorry for him. After all, reaching the divine realm is no easy feat. He took out the red divine pool, preparing himself to finally enter the Eternal Library. Suddenly, the eyes of the towering statue standing in the center snapped open, revealing dark, cavernous pupils. They contained an endless divine power. Li Chenxi took one look into those eyes and felt her very soul tremble with terror as a heavy rumbling filled the air. The massive statue raised its arm and gently brushed its hand over Li Heng's head, while a vast, unpredictable voice echoed throughout the hall. One glance at those pupils was enough to nearly scare the life out of her. Amidst the thunderous sound, the statue's hand continued its gentle blessing over him. The ancient voice proclaimed his titles: the eternal immortal demon body, the peak of the ages, and the recipient of the chaos divine bone. Then, a creak was heard. A fissure opened in the statue's abdomen, and a bone shimmering with 7-colored light flew out, coming to rest directly in front of Li Heng. It slowly began to merge into his chest. Seeing this divine bone, Li Qinxi found herself shaking uncontrollably from the sheer pressure of it all. This was the legendary Chaos Divine Bone. To think he would obtain such a powerful treasure, a true artifact of chaos. These are the most powerful treasures in the 3 realms. This single bone alone was far more potent than even the primordial earth divine body she had just received. When added to his already formidable demon body, the gap between the 2 siblings widened significantly once more. The girl could only let out a helpless sigh. The advantage she thought she had gained with her new physique vanished in the blink of an eye. The distance between her and her brother was only growing larger. At this rate, she told herself it would be a very long time before she could ever hope to catch up to his footsteps. The Chaos Divine Bone merged into his chest, binding itself to his existing ribs with a rhythmic thumping sound. His heart began to beat with newfound strength and vigor. With every pulse, his blood roared as it surged through his entire body. Within his veins, he could actually hear the sound of a whistling tsunami. He couldn't help but marvel at just how powerful his divine body had become. With the eternal immortal demon body and this Chaos Divine Bone combined, his potential had reached a level that was, quite frankly, inconceivable. We now find ourselves entering the Temple of Divine Bodies, where the opportunities granted are tied to one's physical form. As the statue returned to its original state, Li Heng walked to its feet, noticing a dense field of Dao energy surrounding it. This place was easily as potent as the 18th level of Hell, making it an ideal spot for his 1000-path cultivation. With his multiplier now reaching 21 times, he was certain the rewards would be nothing short of extraordinary. He waited with quiet anticipation until the system announced his reward, a single bottle of eternal divine oil. Thanks to the multiplier, he received 21 extra bottles. Divine oil? Upon hearing that name, we see him pause. His expression became quite colorful as he wondered if this oil possessed some rather specific effects. To be honest, we can't blame him. He told himself he might test it later, then closed his eyes to enter the system space and check the description. This oil forms on the Mountain of Gods, where primordial chi gathers, producing only a single drop every 10,000 years. It possessed a terrifying body-tempering effect. With a casual wave, a palm-sized jade bottle appeared in his hand. He popped the redwood stopper with a soft click and peered inside, letting the sunlight illuminate the contents. Inside was a golden liquid, exactly 100 drops. It was for body tempering after all. He had gotten excited for nothing. Still, this was a treasure from the Mountain of Gods. 1 drop per 10 millennia made it incredibly precious. A full bottle represented 1,000,000 years of accumulation. The eternal 1000-path mode was proving to be quite a delight. Where he should have only received 1 bottle, the multiplier had instantly boosted his haul by 21. Including the original, he now held 22 bottles. If we look at the timeline, that is quite a staggering amount. It would have taken 22 million years to naturally produce this much. Even for someone like Li Heng, it felt like a fortune. He decided this oil would be perfect for use during his body tempering stage. And then, the next door swung inward. An ancient aura rushed out as a library decorated with red patterns revealed itself to the 2 of them. Li Qinxi didn't hesitate for a second and walked straight in, passing through an invisible barrier at the entrance. As the girl approached, the barrier sensed the divine pool in her hands and automatically opened a gap just wide enough for 1 person. She walked inside smoothly, and we see Li Heng following close behind with his own multicolored divine pool in hand. He encountered no resistance whatsoever. After all, his multicolored pool held a higher rank than the standard red one. This granted him full access to the library pavilion, a vast space filled with row upon row of shelves packed with ancient books. Anyone who managed to enter this sanctuary was permitted to choose a single volume to take with them when they left. While a purple pool granted entry to the temple, it wasn't enough for the library. Only the top-ranked champion with a red pool could enter. This was the true reason Li Qinxi had been so desperate to claim the first-place spot, even if only for a single hour. Once inside, Li Qinxi stood before the towering shelves, her eyes scanning the titles with intense focus and care. Li Heng eventually stopped before a shelf of his own and picked up a weathered volume to inspect the contents. It was the 9-peak spirit refinement method, a technique for tempering the divine body. He set it back down. It was of little use to him. He picked up another titled The Longevity Return Art. Perhaps some old-timers would find it useful, but he was young and far from death. He set that one aside as well and moved on. After browsing through a dozen more shelves, he still hadn't found the right fit. Then, something caught his eye. The Bloodlead statue, a technique that used the power of one's own bloodline to summon a divine image. The logic was simple. The stronger the power hidden within the blood, the more powerful the summoned statue would be. He asked himself what his greatest strength was, and the answer was undoubtedly his bloodline. To be honest, it wasn't even close. Being able to summon a divine guardian to fight by his side would provide an incredible boost to his combat power at this stage. He decided this was the one and tucked the book under his arm before looking over at his sister, wondering why she was still browsing. He wondered if the sheer number of books had overwhelmed her. With a small smile, he walked toward her, grabbing a random book on the way. He held it up before her eyes, suggesting it might be the perfect fit. Li Chinxi took one look at the title and was instantly fuming. The book was titled Cultivating the Mind and Spirit. He gave it a little shake, teasing her that her temper could use the adjustment. He teased her, suggesting she should just find a good family and get married. Drop dead, she snapped. Even a former empress, it seems, can lose her composure and swear when provoked. He tooted at her, noting how young she was to be using such language, before shoving the book into her arms and insisting it would be good for her. Li Chinxi ignored his teasing entirely. As she turned away, her eyes suddenly caught a glimmer of something in an inconspicuous corner. There sat a yellowed, ancient volume titled The Eternal Great Emperor Sutra. She recalled reading once that this very library held such a legendary treasure. It was said to contain the secret of how to become an eternal great emperor, and the title matched the legend perfectly. She moved with startling speed, snatching the book and tucking it into her spatial bag, but not before Li Heng caught a glimpse of the title. His pupils narrowed. The Eternal Great Emperor Sutra? He wondered if this book truly held the path to that ultimate rank. Above the rank of Great Emperor lies a realm even more profound, known as the Eternal Great Emperor, a title no one has achieved since ancient times. In this era, the Great Emperor is considered the absolute limit. He quickly put on a charming smile and looked his sister in the eye. He asked if she might let him have that book, as he was quite interested in the path to becoming an eternal great emperor himself. After all, in this new life, one must plan ahead to avoid missing such rare opportunities. But Li Chinxi simply said, no. Having found what she wanted, she didn't linger, turning immediately toward the exit while he hurried after her, promising he only wanted a quick look. Unfortunately, she had already secured the book in her spatial storage, making it impossible to snatch. Not a chance, she replied without looking back. They soon passed back through the barrier and left the library. As we know, each person is permitted to take only a single volume. Even if hidden in a spatial bag, the rule holds firm. He silently called her stingy, already plotting a way to borrow the book later. Li Chinxi was ready to crush her divine pool and leave the realm, but he stopped her, pointing toward a much larger door to the right. He began walking toward that massive wooden entrance. She warned him it was impossible. She had never heard of anyone successfully entering that room. It was the treasure hall, a place rumored to be accessible only to the gods who once resided here. He walked right up to the threshold anyway. He placed his multicolored divine pool into the groove on the door. With a heavy groan, the massive gates began to swing inward. An ancient, heavy aura rushed out to meet them. At that moment, Li Chinxi's expression became, to put it mildly, quite a sight to behold. It turns out the multicolored divine pool is the key to the eternal treasure hall. She could hardly believe her eyes as the legendary vault opened. Inside lay various treasures collected by the gods themselves, each one a rare gem nearly impossible to find within the three realms. Securing even one would offer infinite benefits. She worried that if this boy, already so powerful, gained another treasure, no one else would stand a chance. Li Heng passed through the barrier with ease, but when Li Chinxi tried to follow, she was violently repelled the moment she touched the energy. Evidently, a red divine pool wasn't enough to grant entry here. Only the multicolored rank would suffice. She was stuck on the outside. The barrier didn't just block her path, it completely obscured the interior. The treasures were right there, yet she could neither reach nor see them. Left with no choice, Li Chinxi waited outside. Meanwhile, Li Heng was stunned by the sheer volume of riches surrounding him inside the hall. The room was filled with rare woods and artifacts of the highest quality, all of them intimately connected to the cultivation of a divine body. Right by the entrance, he spotted a golden, Lingji-shaped plant lying on the floor, measuring nearly 10 feet in length. It radiated a dense, spiritual aura. This was the golden glow immortal Racier, and to see one of such massive size was truly unheard of. A specimen that large takes at least 10,000 years to form, marking it as a top-tier treasure and proving just how wealthy this vault was. As he explored further, his divine pool sent him a mental message. He was permitted to choose 3 treasures to take with him. Back in the library, he was limited to a single book, but here in the treasure hall, his status allowed for a bit more generosity. Having the multicolored divine pool certainly had its perks, as it granted him the right to claim 3 separate items. He felt a flicker of doubt as to why he couldn't sign in here, but he assumed all the Dao luck was concentrated in the main hall statue. The luck from that statue was immense. A single sign-in had yielded a bottle of eternal divine oil, where just 1 drop takes 10,000 years to condense. That oil was far more precious than any individual treasure here. Eventually, he carefully selected the 3 items that caught his eye. He chose the golden glow immortal Racier, the profound heaven immortal dew, and the spirit rhyme pagoda before heading back to his sister. Li Chinxi hadn't left. She was pacing restlessly outside the hall until she finally saw the handsome young boy emerge. She eagerly asked what he had found inside, hoping he might share. He simply raised an eyebrow and began to tell a rather exaggerated tale. He told her there were countless treasures inside and that he had chosen 10 of them, a small lie, of course, to explain any future items he might pull from his space. What? You were allowed to pick 10? Li Chinxi gasped so hard she nearly choked on the air, her eyes widening in pure disbelief. She knew the treasures in the hall were far superior to the books in the library. The value of even one was likely beyond measure. To her, the idea of being able to select 10 top-tier treasures was simply staggering, a concept she could barely wrap her head around. She imagined that with 10 of the finest artifacts, his growth in the future would be terrifyingly fast, even by his standards. Some of those items might even be things that couldn't be found anywhere else in the ancient desolate world. Brother, she said, her voice turning serious. You must never show these treasures to outsiders. There is an old saying, an ordinary man is innocent, but possessing a jade treasure makes him a target. She warned him that if others learned of his riches, they would surely come to claim them. While the Li family was safe, the world outside was another matter. To be perfectly honest, the thought of him carrying so many treasures filled her with genuine worry for his safety. She feared he might accidentally reveal one to the wrong person, and he wouldn't always have a guardian by his side to protect him. Li Heng simply nodded, assuring her he wasn't a child and understood the danger of flaunting one's wealth, which, given his true nature, was quite an understatement. Having explored everything within a 10-mile radius of the divine pool, they decided it was finally time to take their leave. The two of them crushed their divine pool tokens, vanishing from the divine realm. Meanwhile, we shift our gaze to a hidden corner of the longevity realm. There lies a place that strikes fear into the hearts of even the strongest cultivators, the En Demon Cave, where biting winds lash against the stone walls. The wind creates a sound like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves, echoing through the deepest reaches of the cavern. A voice cried out for the Ghost King as a mountain of white bones began to shatter under the weight of a sinister, dark energy. From the debris, a massive shadow nearly 100 feet tall crawled out, its eyes glowing with a blood-red, eerie light. Great Ghost King, you have finally returned. By absorbing the power of countless souls, the Red Moon Ghost King had finally been resurrected. He twisted his neck with a sickening crack, his voice raspy as he noted that the cultivators would never expect him to return even stronger than before. He vowed that this time, he would wipe out those sects entirely, and given the sheer pressure he radiated, it wasn't an empty threat. He possessed power equivalent to a human in the Void Abode realm, a level of strength usually reserved for the guardians of the most elite sects. With his strength even greater than before, the Red Moon Ghost King was more than a match for any sect. Great King, the White Bone Demon whispered. He suggested that the king should possess a human body to use as a puppet, preventing the cultivators from spotting his skeletal form so easily. Last time, it was the Ghost King's own carelessness that allowed the cultivators to track him down and corner him within that valley. After a moment of quiet reflection, the Red Moon Ghost King gave a slow nod and asked if there were any living humans nearby. The White Bone Demon sycophantically replied that he had already prepared one, and shortly after, a small demon dragged an old man forward. As they reach the depths of the cave, we see the old man is barely breathing, clearly having suffered devastating injuries at their hands. The demon explained that he had captured the old man a few days ago while he was scouting near the cave, offering him up as a potential vessel. The Ghost King inspected the man's cultivation level and nodded in approval. His strength was decent, and his physical body remained quite sturdy. It would make a fine vessel, but the king wondered who he was and if he belonged to a prominent clan, which would increase his value. The White Bone Demon admitted with some regret that the old man was incredibly stubborn and hadn't revealed a single word about his identity. The Ghost King dismissed this, noting that once he devoured the man's soul, all secrets would be revealed. He spread his arms wide in anticipation. With ghost fires burning in his eyes, he commanded the human to swear his loyalty. The old man simply spat in defiance, choosing death instead. He raised his hand to strike his own skull and end his life, but the White Bone Demon was far too quick and blocked the desperate move. Dying wouldn't be that easy. The Red Moon Ghost King transformed into a dark shadow and lunged directly toward the old man's head. After a brief struggle, he successfully devoured the soul, and the dark shadow vanished as the old man's eyes suddenly snapped open. An eerie red light flickered in his pupils. The body was still that of the old man, but the soul now belonged entirely to the Ghost King. He let out a raspy, chilling laugh at the taste of the delicious soul before closing his eyes once more to begin the soul-searching technique. Fragments of the old man's life began to flash before his eyes, focusing specifically on the memories the man had cherished most in life. The Li family, a divine son, and the eternal immortal demon body. It was all very interesting. Meanwhile, back in a quiet guest room, Li Chinxi carefully locked the doors and windows before finally pulling out the book she had taken from the library pavilion, the Eternal Earth Sutra. As she flipped from the first page to the last, a wave of shock washed over her. It was exactly as she had imagined. Becoming an eternal great emperor was an incredibly difficult path, and in the long ages since the ancient era, much time had passed. There was a reason no one had achieved that rank in so long, as the requirements to become an eternal great emperor were staggering. Every physical attribute had to reach an extreme level. For instance, the first stage of refining spiritual tools required at least 30 refinements. On the current Eternal Divine Tool rankings, the person in the top spot had only managed to refine their tool 25 times. Even on the Divine rankings of the Net Realm, the top scores hovered around 25, and reaching that number was already exceptionally rare. In all this time, no one had ever surpassed the 25 mark, making the goal of 30 refinements seem almost impossible. Chenxi's brow furrowed deeply in concentration. She was determined to succeed, especially when she considered what she had gained in the divine domain. Her expression softened slightly as she remembered the great fortune she found in the divine body hall, ascending to the primordial emperor divine body. With the help of such a powerful body, 30 refinements shouldn't be too much of a problem, though it would still require massive resources. One needs both resources and a strong physical vessel. The two are inseparable. Chenxi tightened her fists in a silent vow. 30 times was just the starting point. She intended to refine even more so that brat could never hope to catch up to her. He had already lost to her several times before, and she certainly didn't plan on losing now. It was time to begin her cultivation. An ancient-looking pagoda flew out from between her brows. It appeared quite ordinary, but it was actually a primordial treasure. The pagoda had 10 levels in total, and with a gentle tap on the bottom floor, a jade bottle appeared in the girl's hand. Inside were 10 profound spirit pills, bursting with spiritual energy. The Qianquan pagoda held more of these pills and liquids than one could count. This was her secret foundation for becoming an emperor. She wondered how her stinky little brother could ever win without such luck. A faint, confident smile played on her lips as she swallowed a pill and began to absorb the rich spiritual energy within. As the energy inside her became increasingly pure, we moved to another guest room in the courtyard, where a young man sat alone at a dinner table. On the table sat a plate of roasted immortal dew leg meat. The aroma was heavenly, and after returning from the divine domain, his stomach was growling incessantly. He decided to fill his belly first, and once satisfied, he sat upon a blue meditation mat, reflecting on the massive harvest he had gathered. First, he had obtained 4 bottles of life tree leaves, then the spirit liquid heavenly pool, and even 2 10,000-year-old crimson sun immortal herbs. At 2 other locations, he had secured cultivation pills, 10 bottles of 9 spirit pills, and 12 bottles of Shenjing pills. The value of these items combined was already astronomical, but then he had acquired 22 bottles of eternal divine oil all at once. From the treasure vault, he had gained 3 more cultivation treasures that would prove incredibly effective for the upcoming process of refining his spiritual energy. These were the Golden Glow Immortal Herb, the Xiantian Immortal Dew, and the Spirit Rhyme Treasure Pagoda. The herb could be used for alchemy or eaten directly. While eating it raw was slightly less effective, the Xiantian Immortal Dew, a liquid used for tempering the physical body, wasn't needed just yet. However, it would be vital for the body tempering stage later on. For now, his focus shifted to the Spirit Rhyme Treasure Pagoda. With a flick of his wrist, a 7-story miniature tower appeared in the open space, radiating a dense, vibrant spiritual essence. The interior of this pagoda was a sacred cultivation ground, containing a vast amount of spiritual energy just waiting to be consumed. This was exactly what he needed to refine his energy. He knew the Li family also possessed a cultivation land called the Profound Spirit Secret Realm. Such precious lands usually contained a check-in point, and under the influence of his double reward effect, the prizes would be legendary. He told himself he had to take the top spot on the Eternal Divine Tool rankings, as different divine treasures offered vastly different opportunities. The next list he could participate in was indeed the Divine Tool rankings, and he felt more than ready for the challenge. He wouldn't even attempt the test unless he was certain of taking first place. Closing his eyes, he let his consciousness sink into the system space. By refining his energy here, the resulting commotion wouldn't affect the outside world. He started with the Spirit Liquid Heavenly Pool he had earned earlier. The pool was 3 zhang wide and 21 zhang long, filled entirely with spirit liquid, enough to sustain his absorption for a very long time. Inside the system world, his phantom image entered the pool, and the liquid flowed directly into his body as the refinement process began over and over. As the liquid in the pool slowly diminished, his aura grew steadily stronger, though the further the refinement progressed, the slower the speed became. And so, 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. The liquid in the pool was completely absorbed, and a sudden boom echoed through the room. His aura surged violently. With 25 refinements, he was already certain he could take the top spot on the Divine Tool rankings, but he wasn't finished yet. 25 times was by no means his limit. With an abundance of pills and spirit liquid at his disposal, he had no reason to worry about resources. He decided to keep refining until he reached his absolute breaking point. His goal wasn't just power, but something far more enduring. He wanted to build an unbreakable foundation for his future. To do that, he entered the Spirit Rhyme Treasure Pagoda to continue his work. Inside was a world spanning 1,000,000 miles, where the spiritual energy was 100 times denser than the outside world, a perfect sanctuary for cultivation. By using his shadow chi technique, he drew in the energy from 10,000 miles around, forcing it to converge upon him with incredible speed. The spiritual energy within him became increasingly pure. Half a year later, we find him still sitting cross-legged on the floor of his room. Thick, demonic energy now swirled around his body. He exhaled a breath of turbid air and slowly opened his eyes, feeling the change within. The demonic energy in his body was now over 1,000 times stronger than before. Over the last 6 months, he had refined both his spiritual and demonic energies. By now, his spiritual energy had undergone 35 refinements, while his demonic energy had reached 32. A staggering achievement, to be sure. 36 refinements was the eternal limit, and with his immortal demon divine body, he was confident he could reach that peak without any issues. All he needed now was a little more time. Suddenly, a thunderous roar erupted from the direction of the backyard, shaking the very air. His eyes narrowed slightly. It seemed his younger sister, Chinsi, was refining her energy quite fast and was already challenging the eternal divine tool rankings. He immediately ended his meditation and hurried toward the rankings. There, in the square, stood a massive stone monument reaching toward the sky. The words, Eternal Divine Tool Rankings were carved into it, and Chinsi's name had already appeared right at the very top. She was still using a pseudonym, of course. The top spot belonged to Muzi, with 32 refinements, followed by Yi Tianfan with 25. In third place was Wang Heng, with 24. When the members of the Li family saw these numbers, they were utterly stunned. They couldn't believe their eyes. Their goddess had managed 32 refinements, a feat so impressive it seemed almost legendary to them. Even the famous Yi Tianfan had only reached 25. She had surpassed the second-place contender by a full 7 refinements, which is quite the gap. Chinsi was truly a goddess of the 3 realms. We must remember that reaching 25 refinements is already an incredibly difficult feat. That record had held the top spot for over 8,000 years, completely unshakable, until now, as Li Chinsi displayed her proud talent. By surpassing the second place by 7 full refinements to reach the summit, she had achieved something worthy of the history books. Suddenly, the sky hummed. A cluster of red light descended, enveloping a treasure of heaven and earth. As the Li family members watched this crimson glow, envy was written across every face. This was an eternal opportunity, and since Li Chinsi had reached the top, the reward was bound to be extraordinary. With such a gift, the goddess's future potential would be limitless. Some divine rankings reward a sacred pool for entering the eternal divine domain, while others bestow opportunities directly. This eternal divine tool ranking happened to be a stone monument that granted rewards on the spot. Instead of a sacred pool, the light orb drifted down right in front of Li Chinsi. The young girl reached into the glow, pulling out an immortal herb that radiated a dense, celestial aura. As the energy spread, everyone nearby felt their spirits lift. Immortal herbs are quite rare in the longevity realm. Many didn't even recognize it, though they knew it was a treasure of immense value. The longevity ancestor, however, possessed vast knowledge. Upon identifying the celestial plant, his eyes widened in complete shock. He gasped, realizing it was a 10 absolute immortal herb, and an incredibly large one at that. Even in the desolate Heaven Valley, such a herb is extremely rare. A single foot of growth usually takes about 1,000 years. The one before them was nearly 3 feet long. If a plant of this age appeared in the desolate Heaven Valley, it would undoubtedly drive thousands of immortal sects into a frenzy. The top-ranking reward was indeed magnificent. Meanwhile, at the edge of the square, the young boy watched the red light descend, his pupils suddenly shrinking. He sensed the presence of eternal chi. In his eyes, beyond the red glow, there was a thick golden light, the very same eternal chi he had gathered in the eternal divine domain. He realized this red light was Li Chinsi's reward and had nothing to do with him. After a moment's thought, the reason became clear. These eternal opportunities originate from the eternal divine domain, where treasures accumulate power over vast stretches of time. Naturally, they absorb the eternal chi. When these treasures leave the domain, they carry that energy with them, though it fades over time. We see that this eternal chi slowly dissipates over time, so he quickly trotted over to Li Chinsi's side to catch what remained. As he neared the Shijua immortal herb, the golden gas was drawn into his body, and he felt the familiar surge of the eternal chi. His rewards were boosted 6-fold, and his daily limit increased as well. Deep down, he was overjoyed, and a smile crept onto his face. He hadn't expected to benefit so much from his sister's good fortune, a pleasant surprise, to be sure. However, there was a catch. He could only absorb the energy if he was standing right next to her when she received these opportunities. If she reached the summit while he was away, he would miss out entirely. He decided then and there that whenever his sister sought to climb the rankings, he would be right by her side. Li Chinsi noticed her brother standing there, staring at her new herb with what she considered a rather suspicious smile. She immediately grew wary, wondering if her brother was plotting something, and quickly tucked the herb away into her spatial ring. She was terrified he might try to snatch it, though in reality, he didn't find the herb particularly precious at all. He gave her a dismissive look, wondering why he'd even want it. Chensi, however, simply ignored him, noting how long it had been since they last spoke. She challenged him to test his own refinements, but he kept his progress, 35 refinements so far, entirely to himself. He was only one step away from his limit, and he knew the divine ranking only granted rewards based on a person's very first test. Li Chensi took his silence as a sign of defeat, convinced that her brother simply couldn't keep up with her talent. She felt she had finally bested him, suspecting that his refinement count wasn't even high enough to crack the top 100. She told herself this was just the beginning of her streak of victories, and that he would never have the chance to beat her again. He reached out and ruffled her hair into a messy heap, telling her not to get too ahead of herself. To be honest, he enjoyed teasing her. He told her to enjoy the top spot for a few days, warning her that she'd be crying soon enough before he turned and walked away. We move now to the Phoenix Valley Kingdom, where an elderly woman lay in a fiery red hall, her breath growing faint. She whispered to young Fenger that her time was coming to an end, and that the kingdom's future now rested with the younger generation. A beautiful young girl stood by the bedside, insisting that the ancestor would surely recover from her illness. The young girl, Jean Fenger, the princess of the ancient kingdom, promised to seek the longevity medicine from the Li family to save her. Born with the rare Phoenix bloodline, she was destined to be one of the next successors to the ancient throne. But the ancestor, Tianfeng, simply shook her head, having already accepted the natural cycle of life and death. Such medicine is never easily found. Even if the Li family possessed it, they wouldn't just hand it over. After 8,000 years, she felt she had lived long enough. Her only regret was that she could no longer guide the girl. Looking at the ancestor's gaunt face, Fenger finally made a firm decision. No matter the cost, she would find that medicine. Meanwhile, we turn our attention to the Xianling secret realm. This unique space spans about 5 miles and is filled with incredibly dense spiritual energy, perfect for those below the profound core realm. The closer one gets to the core, the denser the energy becomes, reaching up to 10 times the concentration of the outside world. We see Liang practicing in this core area, soaking in the energy. Among the younger generation, his talent was considered quite high. It was this talent that earned him the right to enter. Suddenly, the sound of crisp footsteps caught his attention near a small tree. A child who appeared to be only 3 or 4 years old appeared. Recognizing the divine son, Liang immediately stopped his cultivation. He bowed deeply in a show of respect. The divine son looked around the core area of the Xianling secret realm and gave a slight nod. To him, however, the spiritual energy here felt incredibly thin compared to the 100-fold concentration of the Spirit Fortune Pagoda. Liang looked on with a hint of embarrassment. To call a place 10 times richer than the outside world thin seemed a bit much. He truly couldn't imagine what kind of environment the divine son would actually consider dense. It was a humbling thought, really. He offered his own cultivation spot to the boy, insisting it was a prime location, but the divine son simply declined. He saw no point in absorbing such weak energy. Instead, his gaze shifted toward a specific check-in point nearby. It was the spot where the Taoist fortune of the secret realm gathered. Liang stepped back, his expression turning a bit sour. He couldn't tell if the divine son's standards were just impossibly high or if he was simply being arrogant. Either way, he felt slighted. Though he dared not say a word, he watched as the boy walked toward the center and stood beside a spring. Silently, he uttered the words check-in. Immediately, the system responded. He had obtained the Xianling Pagoda with a 27-fold reward increase. The original reward, the Xianling Pagoda, contained a space of about 1 square mile, filled with dense spiritual energy. But thanks to the boost, he received the Tianyuan Pagoda instead, containing a 100-mile space with incredibly powerful spiritual energy. He gave a slight nod, quite satisfied with the reward. This multiplier effect was proving to be a truly formidable tool. Without the multiplier, the Xianling Pagoda would have been merely a precious gift. But after a 21-fold increase, the resulting Tianyuan Pagoda was a rare treasure indeed. While not quite on the level of the Spirit Fortune Pagoda, it was close. To be honest, it was impressive that such a rare reward could be obtained in a place like this. It certainly proved the power of the eternal check-in system. Having secured his prize, he had no intention of staying here to absorb energy. He prepared to leave the secret realm. But then, suddenly, an old man in a gray robe appeared in the core area. The man held a broom, sweeping the ground with casual, rhythmic strokes that seemed almost too careless. His eyes weren't on the ground. However, he was looking around as if searching for something specific. Not long after, the figure of a child appeared ahead. The old man's eyes grew as sharp as a hawk's, and his pace quickened instantly. Dust flew into the air as withered leaves and weeds danced in the wind. Our protagonist watched the old man's movements closely. His brow furrowed. Something was very wrong with this old man. After all, he himself had 1,000 years of sweeping experience. He knew exactly how a floor should be swept, and this man's heart clearly wasn't in his work. He was plotting something. There was a thick aura in his eyes, not just killing intent, but the cold stench of death. He sensed it clearly. Deep inside the old man's body, there was a lingering energy that felt like the rotting breath of someone long dead. The old man's lips curled into a stiff, eerie smile. He noted that the little brat had surprisingly sharp instincts. He planned to swallow the boy's demonic energy, drink his blood, and turn him into a puppet. Such a perfect vessel was rare. Within moments, the old man was only 30 feet away. He lunged, thrusting his broom forward like a spear. "Who are you? Why would anyone dare lay a hand on the divine son?" Li Yong, fueled by sudden protective rage, instantly crossed 30 feet to intervene. He kicked the wooden handle of the broom, which shattered into splinters. The old man hissed, asking how he dared ruin his plans. A layer of black mist rose from the old man's face, and 2 clusters of eerie blue ghost fire ignited within his pupils. Li Yong took one look at that spectral fire, and his body froze. He realized this was the dreaded Red Moon Ghost King. He demanded to know why the king was targeting the Li clan. It was clear now, the old man was dead, a mere vessel for the Ghost King. The entity was hiding in the corpse to assassinate the divine son. The Ghost King simply told the boy to shut his mouth. Not wanting to cause a scene, the Red Moon Ghost King released black energy from his palm, which transformed into a pair of giant hands. The spectral hands clamped around Li Yang's neck. He struggled desperately, but he couldn't break free from that ghostly grip. Panic set in. He was certain that both he and the divine son were going to die here at the hands of this monster. The Ghost King let out a chilling, sage-like laugh and stepped toward the young boy, telling him to sacrifice his life. Ghostly energy erupted from the old man's mouth, enveloping the boy's body. Our protagonist, however, didn't seem bothered at all. He noted that such weak energy couldn't possibly trap him. With a thought, he released a wisp of pure, pitch-black demonic energy. The surrounding ghostly mist was instantly repelled by that single wisp, almost as if the energy itself was trembling in fear. The Ghost King's eyes flared with shock. He couldn't believe how pure this demonic energy was. It was practically unheard of. Usually, as one's realm increases, their energy becomes more refined. Yet his own energy, even at the Ghost King level, was nowhere near as pure as this child's. It was a terrifying realization. To have energy condensed to such a degree was something even he hadn't achieved back when he was refining his own power. By the time he learned the secret, it was too late. The Ghost King grew excited, promising to leave the boy's body intact if he sacrificed all that demonic energy to him. He unleashed a massive wave of ghost energy to swallow the boy. Our protagonist quickly formed a hand seal as the mist closed in. In an instant, the energy was sucked into his body and converted into spiritual power. It wasn't nearly enough, he noted calmly. The Ghost King, now visibly rattled, demanded to know what kind of demonic art this was as he scrambled to retract his energy. He had never encountered such a bizarre technique before. Usually, the energy he refined remained under his absolute control. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for an outsider to seize his ghostly essence, yet this boy was doing exactly that. His hard-earned energy was being snatched away in an instant. If the king wouldn't offer it, our protagonist decided he would simply take it. He formed several more hand seals, pushing the devouring demon art to its absolute limit as a low hum began to vibrate through the air. Black energy began pouring out of the old man's every orifice, looking as though his very soul was being forcibly extracted. Li Yong finally broke free from the spectral grip, gasping for air while watching in disbelief at how powerful the divine son truly was. He could never have imagined that a 3-year-old child could push a Ghost King into such a desperate corner. It was, frankly, a bit eerie. The Ghost King had originally intended to eliminate the boy quietly and flee the Xianlin secret realm without alerting his soul. But faced with this unknown demonic power, he found himself backed into a corner, forced to use far more violent methods. With a roar to break the seal, the old man's vessel exploded into fragments, and the Ghost King's true form finally emerged. He transformed into a massive, 30-foot-tall spectral shadow, causing the devouring art to lose its effect. He decided then that the boy must die. The king promised to tear him limb from limb and throw the remains to the dogs. Li Yong, seeing this true form, collapsed in terror. He scrambled backward, paralyzed by the sheer horror of the Red Moon Ghost King, desperately praying for the clan head to save them. We should remember that this realm is meant for those below the profound core stage, meaning powerful masters are rarely nearby. Even if the clan sensed something was wrong, it would take far too long for reinforcements to arrive and intervene. By then, the two of them would likely be long gone. The Ghost King lunged, intent on ending the fight as quickly as possible. Our protagonist, however, didn't panic. He simply bit his fingertip and squeezed out a single drop of ink-black blood. Invoking the Blood Shadow Idol, that single drop transformed into a black mist, condensing into a 100-foot-tall demon god in the sky. With blood-red eyes, a massive trident, and demonic flames at its feet, the entity filled the entire secret realm with a terrifying pressure. Many disciples practicing in the secret realm felt the demonic energy and collapsed in terror, and even the Red Moon Ghost King himself was shaken. The ghostly fire in his eyes trembled as he shivered, wondering how on earth this child had managed to summon a literal demon god. The Ghost King gasped, retreating step after step under the demon god's gaze. Our protagonist, however, knew it was time for this to end. This technique, which he had obtained back in the Eternal Temple, was perfect for him, requiring only a single drop of blood to manifest. The stronger his bloodline, the more powerful the idol became. Standing at 1,000 feet tall, the demon god made the ghost king look tiny. Compared to this entity, the king was less than an infant. The demon god simply raised its foot and crushed the ghost king into the dirt. A miserable howl echoed from beneath that massive heel. To be honest, the ghost king's regrets were likely deeper than the crater he was in. Had he known the boy was this terrifying, he never would have attempted an ambush. It was, quite literally, a death sentence. As the demon god exerted more pressure, the screams grew more pathetic until the ghost king's aura vanished entirely. Liang just stared, paralyzed. He was so frightened his mind nearly went blank. This was the divine sun's power, utterly terrifying. A ghost king, wiped out just like that. The Red Moon Ghost King had been notorious across the Qingzhou region, a name used to silence crying infants through sheer reputation. Even when 4 or 5 major sects had joined forces to hunt him down in the past, they had failed to truly kill him. And yet, here he was, meeting his end at the hands of the divine sun. What's truly absurd, of course, is that the boy is only 3. He is supposed to be a beginner. Suddenly, the sound of whistling air filled the sky as a dozen powerful figures rushed toward the scene. Leading them was clan head Li Hongtian, who nearly fell off his flying vessel in shock when he saw the towering demon god above. He demanded to know where this demon came from and prepared to attack, but Liang quickly shouted out to stop him. He urged the clan head to wait, explaining that the divine sun had summoned this entity. Li Hongtian immediately recalled his vessel. Landing beside Liang, he demanded a full report of what had happened. Liang began to recount the events, still visibly shaken. The pressure from the demon god was so immense that even the clan head knew he would be no match for it. He ordered an immediate investigation. He commanded his men to interrogate everyone and bring him any suspects. After an event like this, he decided it was time to tighten security. We see that he cannot afford even the slightest lapse in concentration. In a unique space, a 100-foot pagoda floats at the very center of the world. The tower is divided into 10 levels, with rich spiritual energy overflowing from every window. On the nearby open ground, a small child sits cross-legged, circulating his cultivation technique to absorb the energy released by the pagoda. This structure, as we recall, is the Tianyuan pagoda obtained from the secret realm. The spiritual energy in his body grows purer with every passing second. He pushes toward an even higher level of purity. After refining it 36 times, he has finally reached the eternal limit. By reaching the god rankings with the eternal limit, the rewards he receives will be far more generous. He had delayed this moment for quite some time, simply because his demonic energy also required refining. Both needed to reach 36 cycles before he could break through to the body-tempering realm. With his spiritual energy at its peak, he continues to temper his demonic energy. It will still take a while to complete the process entirely. 3 days pass in the blink of an eye. Several distinguished guests from the ancient city of Phoenix arrive at the Li family's Qianyuan Hall. A maid carries and finds spiritual tea, filling the cups of the guests. The hand of the heavenly Phoenix ancestor trembles slightly as he holds his tea. Taking a small sip, he remarks in a frail, aged voice that he likely won't have the chance to drink this Xuanya spiritual tea again. Li Hongtian shakes his head with a touch of regret, suggesting that heaven favors the worthy and a breakthrough might still happen in a few days. The old man sighs, noting he has been stuck at this level for 5,000 years. To be honest, that is a rather long time to wait for a promotion. With a peaceful expression, the heavenly Phoenix ancestor says he has long since accepted life and death. His only lingering attachment, it seems, is for the younger generation. He points a withered hand toward the youths beside him, asking Clan Headley to look after them. Li Hongtian nods in agreement, noting that the Phoenix ancient kingdom and the Li family have always been on excellent terms. He promises they will support one another in the future. Hearing this, the ancestor is finally at peace, his final worry resolved. His brow relaxes as he leans back against his chair. Nearby, 2 children are seated. We can guess who they are. The ancestor observes that these must be the divine son and divine daughter, noting that they are as extraordinary as the rumors suggested. Despite his advanced age, his senses remain sharp. He can feel the surging, powerful blood energy within the boy and the girl. It is the kind of power usually seen in cultivators who have trained for decades, yet here it is, manifest in 2 small children. The heavenly Phoenix ancestor turns to the youths beside him and tells them to pay their respects. Those who traveled with him are the elite of the kingdom's younger generation, all around 20 years old. Among the 2 young men and 2 young women, only Jean Fenger remains close to the ancestor, while the others hesitate. To be honest, their pride is clearly getting in the way. They tell themselves that these are just 3-year-old toddlers, and by all rights, the children should be the ones bowing to their elders. Bowing to such small children feels like a loss of face, and the other 2 youths remain rooted to the spot, unwilling to move. The ancestor frowns and urges the 4 of them forward. He is, in fact, taking great pains to secure their future. The extraordinary nature of the divine son and daughter has already spread through the longevity realm. They are destined to become legends. As the saying goes, they are dragons waiting for the storm to take flight. Befriending them now is a very wise investment. A close relationship now ensures they won't suffer later. Among the four, Jean Fonger is the one closest to the ancestor. She is the most obedient, and without a second thought, she is the first to step forward and stand before the young girl. Placing her hands at her waist, she bows deeply and offers her greetings to the divine daughter. Li Chengxi, seated in her chair, simply gives a slight nod without even lifting her eyelids. Given her true status, even a full kowtow would hardly be enough. Jean Fonger then moves toward the boy, repeating the same formal gesture to pay her respects to the divine son. He, however, which is quite relatable, really.